Hi guys. Tonight we begin our slow glide into the Great Plains, just as winter tightens its long pale fingers across the grasslands. You stand there in the faint glow of a sinking sun, watching the horizon flatten into a cold, calm sheet. The wind brushes your face with that sharpness you only get before real winter arrives, the kind that seems to whisper that if you wandered out alone for too long, you probably would not survive this. Out here, nothing is exaggerated. The air is exactly as unforgiving as it feels. You inhale, and it pinches your lungs in a way that tells you the season is already deeper than the calendar claims. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and feel free to drop your location and the local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, and you let the story carry you forward into the cold sweep of the plains. You push your boots through frost that has turned each blade of grass into a tiny spear of glass. The land beneath you is quiet in that specific winter way, where everything seems to hold its breath. People who lived here long before you ever thought about bedtime stories knew how to read these early signs. The tightening cold, the migration of birds that rehearsed the same patterns year after year, the animals' shifting routes, even the way the wind changed pitch. One mainstream historical fact slips into your mind. Plains tribes often used the behavior of buffalo and geese to forecast the timing of harsh cold. It was an ecological reading, not superstition, and it helped them pace their final preparations before the deep freeze arrived. You walk along a shallow draw where the wind finally stops clawing at your ears. The sky is going black at the edges. It is the kind of darkness that does not just fall, it arrives like a curtain being pulled across the stage. You feel tiny underneath it. There is a quirky tidbit drifting through your thoughts. Some communities believed that certain prairie dogs were better predictors of winter severity than any human elder. If the little creatures sealed their burrows earlier than usual, it meant storms were lining up like invisible armies far to the north. You smile at the idea of tiny, furry meteorologists controlling community planning. As you stand there, you notice how your breath rises in long white trails. You rub your hands together. The wind returns, tugging small bits of snow left from a quick storm the day before. You follow the thin trail of smoke ahead. It is a signal of people gathering, strengthening lodges, tightening bindings, making decisions. Winter on the plains did not simply fall. It required choreography. Tasks had to be started weeks earlier, long before the first real snowfall ever touched the ground. Historians still argue whether the earliest preparations for winter began primarily with women, or if tasks were more evenly distributed depending on the tribe. You tilt your head at the thought. Either way, work unfolded in layers, gathering wood, drying meat, checking caches, repairing tools, reinforcing shelters, teaching younger members what signs mattered and which ones were harmless noise. The season had a rhythm, and you can almost feel it like a low heartbeat under your feet. A crow circles above you. Its wings flap once, twice, then it angles toward a cluster of cottonwoods, gripping the banks of a frozen creek. You keep moving, letting your imagination slip into the lives that once filled this landscape. Imagine the smell of wood smoke drifting from every direction. Imagine the chatter of people assessing the clouds. Imagine elders pointing toward the northwest where storms usually began their journey. You are part of this quiet choreography now, walking beside those who lived with a depth of environmental knowledge that feels almost impossible from a modern perspective. You crouch beside a patch of earth where someone recently tested the ground before digging. The soil is hard, stiffening as winter settles deeper. The air has a bite that sinks through layers. This is why preparations began early. If you waited until the world froze to start thinking about survival, it was too late. That simple truth shaped entire lifeways. Migrate at the right time. Hunt at the right time. Build at the right time. Listen at the right time. Winter did not forgive the unprepared. You keep walking and feel the hardening land under your steps. There is something oddly comforting about it, as if the world is telling you exactly what is coming and offering no tricks. Predictability can be calming if you know how to respond. In the distance, you hear faint laughter carried by the wind. Maybe the people are sharing an old joke about how someone once forgot their winter mitts on a warm autumn day and then spent the entire winter paying for it. Humor had a role in survival too. It eased tension. It softened the weight of months when the sun barely warmed anything at all. The deeper you move into this imagined winter camp, the more you become aware of layers of sound. A scraper smoothing a hide, a child humming a small melody, the crackle of a fire. the rhythmic tapping of someone tightening bindings on a lodge frame. You inhale smoke that carries hints of sage. The wind settles for a moment and you feel the world hold still. It is a rare pause, and you soak in every second. One elder sits near the fire, eyes half closed. You notice how he studies the sky without seeming to stare too hard. You step closer and watch thin clouds form narrow, long streaks. High wind signs. Snow will likely arrive again soon. The elder nods toward the sky and murmurs something you interpret as a quiet confirmation. The land speaks constantly. You just have to slow down enough to hear what it says. You feel the weight of cold settling deeper on your shoulders. Winter has arrived. You let your hands warm near the fire and listen to quiet conversations about where the next shelter should be reinforced and who will travel tomorrow to check distant buffalo tracks. Everyone contributes because survival is a collective commitment here. You take in that sense of shared purpose, and little by little, the world around you starts to dim. The fire pops. A spark flashes upward. Someone laughs softly. Someone else sighs with tired relief. You close your eyes. The cold outside the fire circle begins to fade from your awareness. What matters now is the warmth, the company, and the long winter about to unfold. You wake slowly, still wrapped in the last traces of warmth from the cooking fire. The sky above you has lightened just enough to reveal a thin rim of pale gold at the horizon. It is not sunrise exactly, more like the world is exhaling before letting the sun climb. You stretch your fingers toward the cold air and feel the sting of frost nibble at your knuckles. It is a reminder that today is one of those decisive days, a day when people hurry to reinforce homes before the next storm arrives. You push yourself to your feet, stamp the stiffness from your legs, and let the cold sharpen your focus. Ahead of you stands a cluster of lodges shaped like tall, protective cones. Others appear rounded, their earth walls blending seamlessly with the frozen ground. You can almost feel the urgency that once filled this place. Winter demanded attention. Structures that kept everyone warm needed strengthening before the snow turned heavy and the wind turned merciless. One mainstream historical fact surfaces as you walk closer. Many plains tribes used buffalo hides stretched tightly over lodge frames, and those hides were often layered more densely during winter to keep heat in and wind out. It was not simply shelter, it was engineering informed by centuries of trial and error. You run your hand along a thick hide exterior. It is stiff in the cold, yet still flexible enough to shift without tearing. Women move around you with practiced motions, adjusting bindings, replacing worn panels, and tightening anchor stakes hammered deep into the frozen soil. Their movements are rhythmic, almost musical. Work like this was not a chore. It was a way to protect the entire camp, and everyone knew their part. You shift to the left, where a group is preparing to overhaul a partially collapsed structure. Snow from a small storm earlier in the week has bent one side inward. People gather there with poles, ropes, and bundles of brush. You can hear the soft cadence of instructions layered over the wind. A young person hands over tools. An elder inspects each joint, tapping gently with their knuckles, as if listening for hidden weaknesses. You watch this silent language of repairs and feel a strange mix of admiration and awe at how coordinated it all is. You duck inside one of the lodges, letting the flap fall behind you. Warm air envelops your face immediately. The scent of dried herbs and smoked meat lingers close to the fire. Your skin relaxes. Your shoulders drop. Inside space feels completely different from the icy world outside. A family is tightening inner linings, adding extra layers to trap body heat. You listen as someone murmurs a reminder about adding cedar boughs around the edges. The smell will keep insects away once spring returns, but right now it also makes the place smell alive. A quirky tidbit rises in your memory. Some communities believed that adding a thin line of charcoal near the doorway could deter mischievous winter spirits who supposedly wandered at night looking for warm places to slip into. You picture a tiny charcoal barrier near your feet and smile. It is a simple thing, half tradition and half playful superstition, yet it brings comfort in a season where comfort was a rare luxury. You step back outside. The wind pushes your hair forward and rushes down the slope toward the creek. Its howl dances around the lodges, slipping between poles and whipping loose bits of grass into the air. The sky above you grows heavier. Winter storms on the Great Plains had no sense of moderation. They arrived with full conviction. Thick curtains of snow, sudden plunges in temperature, winds that could flatten a badly secured lodge in minutes. This is why mornings like this were a race against time. You help lift a long pole and position it against the framework of another lodge. The weight surprises you. The cold makes everything feel denser, as if winter presses its own heaviness into the world. Several hands steady the pole until it slots into place, then others tighten hide coverings around it. The entire structure creaks softly as it adjusts. It feels like listening to a giant stretching its limbs. Historians still debate whether winter building tasks were fully communal, or if certain families specialized in structural work while others focused on gathering supplies. You tilt your head at the thought, imagining both possibilities as you watch the camp move like a single organism. What seems clear is that no one stood idle in weather like this. Every action grew from an understanding that survival required cooperation, timing, and patience. A child wanders near you with a small bundle of grass tucked under their arm. They drop it beside a partially reinforced wall. You kneel, pick up a handful, and notice how dry and brittle it feels, perfect for insulation. People wedge this grass between hide layers to trap warm air inside. You push it gently into a narrow gap, while the child grins proudly, happy to see someone using their contribution. You walk toward the eastern edge of camp, where a different kind of shelter rises from the earth. It looks like a dome, smooth and low, with only a small entrance at the front. Inside, the air feels close and warm, even without a fire. Earth lodges like this could take days or weeks to build, depending on available materials and weather conditions. But once finished, they held heat with remarkable efficiency. A single fire in the center was enough to keep the space comfortable, even on nights when temperatures dropped far below freezing. The interior walls are lined with willow branches woven together tightly, then packed with soil that has hardened to a solid layer. You touch it with your fingertips. The surface feels cool but sturdy. Subtle grooves ripple through the packed earth, the result of many hands smoothing it into shape. This shelter, like every other one you have explored today, whispers the same message. Survival here was not about sheer toughness. It was about knowledge, precise knowledge, generational knowledge. You step back outside and feel the cold sting your face again. You notice another group hauling fresh firewood toward the center of camp. They move quickly because the weather has shifted. The clouds gather so low they almost skim the tops of the lodge poles. A faint rumble sounds from somewhere far off. Not thunder exactly, more like the breath of an approaching storm. You help stack the wood beside a lodge, your hands going numb as you handle each frozen log. You can feel the tension in the air. People lift their heads more often, checking the sky. No one speaks loudly. You hear the controlled urgency of whispered instructions. A few children are herded inside. A dog circles nervously, then curls up near a wall. Even animals understand what is coming. Snow begins to fall in thin diagonal lines. The flakes sting your cheeks. They feel sharp, icy, impatient. You tighten your coat and continue securing a row of stakes near the base of a lodge. The wind is louder now. It slides between the structures and makes the hides ripple like the skin of a living creature. Someone shouts an instruction from behind you. Another person repeats it and passes it down the line. You pause for a moment, letting the snow gather lightly on your eyelashes. The day has changed. Morning preparations have become a race against a storm that no one wants to face unprepared. Yet you feel no panic, only purpose. Everyone around you knows what to do, and their certainty becomes your own. You push the last stake into place and join the group heading toward shelter as the sky darkens into a solid wall of white. Inside the lodge again, the warmth feels like a gift. You sit close to the fire, rubbing your hands together, watching the flames dance over the logs. Snow hits the side of the structure in soft thumps. The storm has begun, but you are protected. Reinforced shelters hold strong. The community has prepared well. The wind may howl, but inside, the fire crackles, and people exhale long, steady breaths of relief. You lean back, letting the sounds blur together, and drift deeper into the comfort of a winter shelter built with care. You wake to the soft glow of embers settling into a deeper orange, their quiet crackling almost like gentle breathing beside you. The storm from last night has eased, leaving a thick white silence wrapped around the camp. When you step outside, the world feels padded and muted, as if every sound has been cushioned by the snow. Your breath rises in slow curls as you make your way toward the communal hearth, the hub that holds the entire winter rhythm together. You kneel in front of it, stretching your fingers toward the first flames of the morning fire. The heat seeps into your skin, and you can almost feel your muscles unclenching. Someone beside you nudges a few pieces of dry wood into place. A faint hiss lifts from the logs as fresh flame licks their sides. This fire is not just warmth, it is the quiet heartbeat of the camp, One established fact nestles into your thoughts. Many families on the Great Plains carried embers from their previous camp to the next, protecting fire from wind and snow as if it were a living child. Maintaining fire meant maintaining continuity. You stare into the glow, imagining someone traveling through biting winds, with a carefully wrapped ember pressed close to their chest. Around you, people stir. A pot goes onto the heat. A handful of dried berries drop into simmering water. The steam carries a soft sweetness that mingles with wood smoke. The scent is grounding. Meals during winter were often simple, but simplicity had its own kind of comfort. You draw in a slow breath, letting the aroma soothe your thoughts. You move closer to the hearth, listening to the quiet rhythm of morning work. Near the edge of the lodge, someone tends a pouch of dried herbs suspended over the flame. The herb blend will be used later to keep respiratory sickness at bay. You lean closer and catch a whiff of minty sharpness. It wakes your senses with surprising clarity. As you watch the steam rise, an offbeat bit of seasonal lore drifts through your mind. Some communities believed that flickering flames could carry messages to distant relatives, as long as the sender whispered their thoughts while feeding a small pinch of herbs into the fire. You picture someone whispering a message into the heat, hoping the sparks would carry their words through the winter night. The fire snaps and throws a few sparks upward. A warm glow strikes your cheeks. Outside, wind begins to gather speed. It rattles the hide coverings and pushes fine snow against the walls. You listen to the shifting pressure, the way it rises and falls like a distant drum. Fires had to be carefully tended during winds like this. A loose flap or sudden gust could choke the flames or scatter embers onto dry bedding. That vigilance becomes your focus as you reach for a poker and shift the logs slightly, allowing air to move more freely. Several people join you. One brings another armful of small sticks and gently lays them beside the hearth. Another crouches, warming their hands and offering a quiet laugh about how their fingertips always go numb on mornings like this, no matter how tightly they wrap them. There is a camaraderie that forms naturally around the fire. You sit shoulder to shoulder with strangers who feel like family, united by the simple promise of warmth. You glance upward, noticing how the light inside the lodge flickers against the poles supporting the structure. Firelight reveals every small detail: scratches in the wood, threads in the hide coverings, ash drifting lazily above the flames. A researcher once pointed out that fire served as more than heat. It acted as a visual cue, helping maintain focus during long nights of storytelling, tool-making, and communal planning. You nod to yourself. It makes perfect sense. Humans have always been drawn to fire. It shapes how we listen, how we rest, how we share knowledge. The fire grows hotter now. Someone adds heavier logs, and the flames coil around them with renewed enthusiasm. You adjust your position, feeling warmth soak through your layers. This is one of those rare moments in winter when comfort feels complete. Heat presses against your skin, while cold air brushes the back of your neck. The contrast makes you more aware of your own breath, your own heartbeat, your own fragile presence in a land that never softens without reason. A child wanders in with a small clay bowl. They place it gently at the edge of the fire and wait. Inside the bowl sits a thick paste made from crushed choke cherries and rendered fat. As it warms, the aroma deepens into something rich and inviting. You watch the child take cautious sips, their eyes half closing with satisfaction. A soft smile spreads across your face. Winter comfort comes in small moments like this, not grand gestures. You shift closer to the fire and close your eyes for a moment. Sparks crackle softly. Someone hums under their breath, a tune so faint it melts into the rustling of the lodge walls. The warmth eases tension you did not realize you were holding. The longer you sit here, the more the outside world fades into a quiet blur. It is as if the fire has built a small sanctuary within the storm, inviting everyone near it to breathe more slowly. Another bowl is passed around, this one filled with a fragrant drink steeped in juniper. You take a sip. The taste is sharp but soothing. You let it linger on your tongue, enjoying the heat slipping down your throat. You swallow and feel warmth bloom in your chest. Someone beside you murmurs that the juniper infusion helps keep winter aches away. You nod, grateful for every small comfort this season offers. You open your eyes. The fire has grown brighter, and shadows dance along the walls. You realize how central this hearth is, not just physically, but emotionally. Here, people share space when the world outside becomes too harsh. Here, worries soften. Here, decisions unfold with clarity. A soft hum of conversation rises around you. People speak gently, laughing quietly, as though protecting the calm that the fire creates. Outside, the wind strengthens again. Snow whistles against the hide walls and slips through tiny cracks. You adjust a flap near your feet to keep the draft out. Someone across the fire nods approvingly. Winter is always testing the camp, always pressing. Yet here inside the circle of warmth, you feel protected. The flames flare again, and with them comes a thread of memory from an elder sitting nearby. They talk about the time a fire survived an entire 3-day storm without going out. They describe how everyone took shifts tending it, how children gathered close to hear stories, how the crackling flames seemed to push back the storm itself. You listen, imagining that scene. Snow piling outside, wind screaming through the darkness, and inside, firelight wrapping around everyone like a protective hand. Experts remain divided over how many winter traditions centered directly on the hearth, but you can hear in the elder's voice that the fire was more than necessity. It shaped mood, memory, ritual, and community. You feel that truth settle easily into your chest as you continue to watch the flames. You add one more piece of wood and scoot a little closer. You let the warmth fill your senses. Your eyelids grow heavy. The fire crackles with a steady rhythm, inviting you deeper into the quiet. You stay there, letting the slow pulse of heat and light carry you into the heart of winter life on the plains. You step outside again once the fire behind you has settled into a steady glow. The storm has left the camp wrapped in heavy snow, smooth and untouched in every direction. Each step crunches softly beneath your feet as you walk toward a small rise overlooking the plains. The sky is a pale, icy blue, and the air carries that deep stillness that only appears after a night of relentless wind. Out here, everything matters more in winter. Every stored root, every dried strip of meat, every carefully hidden bundle of corn or beans becomes part of the invisible architecture that holds the community together. You kneel near a row of faint depressions in the snow. Beneath each mound lies a hidden world of preparation. Many plains communities created carefully concealed underground caches long before winter settled in. One reliable detail recorded by early observers explains how these storage pits were dug deep, lined with grass or bark, then sealed with earth and stones so predators could not sniff them out. You brush snow from one mound and imagine the dry earth beneath your palm, protecting food the same way a locked chest guards treasure. A small group approaches from the north side of camp. They carry long wooden poles used for prying open cache lids. You follow them closely, feeling the anticipation that always accompanied midwinter inventory checks. Supplies had to be monitored with precision. Too much consumption too soon, and spring would become a season of hunger. Too much rationing, and people would weaken during the coldest months. Winter was a slow balancing act, and you can feel the weight of those decisions in your bones. A woman kneels first, using her gloved hands to brush aside snow. She taps the frozen ground lightly, listening for a hollow echo beneath the surface. When she finds it, she nods and signals for the poles. With steady movements, they loosen the earth, then lift away the lid. A breath of warmer, drier air rises from below, carrying the smell of dried corn and preserved squash. It is a humbling scent, both familiar and profoundly comforting. You peer into the pit. Rows of carefully wrapped bundles sit inside like resting birds. Each package contains something different: dried bison meat, choke cherry cakes, rendered fat stored in leather bags. You reach down and touch the top layer. The texture is smooth and cool. A peculiar, lesser-known detail surfaces in your mind. Some groups lightly dusted food bundles with powdered clay to deter insects once temperatures began to warm. It was a simple trick, but surprisingly effective, and the memory of that technique adds another layer of respect for the quiet ingenuity around you. As the group inspects the cache, they speak softly, counting the bundles, checking for moisture, and examining the lining for damage. You watch their faces. No one seems anxious, just focused. Winter survival was never about panic. It was about discipline and understanding that the land rewarded foresight more than bravery. One elder mutters thoughtfully as they examine a small crack in the cache wall. Their brow furrows slightly. They gesture for younger helpers to patch it before closing the pit again. The conversation nearby hints at different techniques used for lining caches. Some preferred straw, others insisted on bark. A few favored clay-coated baskets stacked inside. You listen to these variations and smile, because this is the heart of winter knowledge. Practical, adaptive, shaped by generations of trial and refinement. You wander a bit farther and find another cache site. This one is older, with a wide, round lid made of packed earth. A young man kneels beside it, drawing a pattern in the snow with the tip of a stick. He explains quietly that each family had distinctive designs to mark their cache. Some used symbols, others used arrangements of stones. The goal was always the same: concealment without confusion. You picture families spreading out across the snowy plains, each searching for a marker known only to them. A researcher once noted that underground caches also protected food from sudden temperature swings that could spoil certain perishable items. That insight drifts into your mind now as you press your hand to the cool surface of the lid. The temperature underground stays steadier than the wild fluctuations of a Great Plains winter. It is like the earth itself becomes a partner in survival, offering a quiet, steady hand. You stand again and take in the wide landscape. The horizon shimmers faintly under the winter sun. Snow stretches unbroken in every direction, except for the faint pathways where people have walked. From here you can see how widely the caches are spaced. They are never clustered too closely. That prevents one disaster, like a collapsed pit or a curious predator, from threatening an entire season's supply. Spacing is a strategy, not chance. You follow a few people to another cache further down the slope. They kneel and begin clearing away snow. While they work, you hear an old story shared with a laugh. The tale tells of a mischievous young hunter who once hid extra treats inside his family's pit and then bragged about having the best stash. Naturally, elders discovered his secret immediately, and he spent the rest of winter hauling firewood for being too confident. You grin gently at the image. Humor, even small humor, made winter feel less imposing. As the lid comes off this second pit, you lean closer. Inside, the scent is deeper and more savory. Strips of bison jerky hang in neat loops. Tallow-filled pouches sit tightly sealed near the edges. A small sack of dried prairie turnips rests near the bottom, tied with a braid of grass. You pick one up carefully. The braid feels delicate but strong, a reminder of how nothing here is accidental. Every knot, every lining, every seal has purpose. Experts remain divided on how widely shared certain storage methods were across the plains, but you sense that diversity in technique was part of the strength itself. Adaptation to local soil types, local predators, and specific climate patterns meant no single method fit all regions. Once again, you feel that comforting reminder that winter knowledge was a mosaic, not a single rule. After the inspection, the group reseals the cache, tamping down the earth with gentle firmness. You help smooth the surface until it looks untouched. This concealment is important. Hungry animals roam constantly, and humans from other bands might pass by as well. Everyone depends on fairness and discretion. You rise, brushing snow from your knees. Your fingertips are numb again. The cold bites sharply now, stronger than before. You pull your coat tighter and follow the others back up the slope. Behind you, the caches vanish once more into the landscape, silent guardians of survival nestled beneath the frozen ground. As you walk, the wind shifts, carrying scents of smoke and distant laughter. You let your steps fall slowly, absorbing the weight of what you just witnessed. Winter on the plains is not simply endured, it is prepared for with an elegance that feels almost ceremonial. Hidden food beneath the snow, warmth inside the lodges, tasks balanced between necessity and tradition. You take another breath and continue toward camp, letting the snow crunch softly under your steps. You make your way toward the center of camp, where a familiar scent drifts through the cold air. It is rich, smoky, and unmistakably tied to the lifeblood of the Great Plains. Even before you reach the work area, you know exactly what you are about to witness. Buffalo shaped everything here. Their presence guided migrations, provided tools, fed families, clothed bodies, and anchored spiritual meaning. In winter, their gifts revealed themselves more sharply than at any other time of year. A few people sit on thick hides spread across the snow, sorting through bundles taken from the late autumn hunt. You kneel beside them. The hides crackle softly under your knees. The air around you has that raw, leathery smell that only fresh buffalo skin can hold. One carefully verified observation from frontier journals slips into your thoughts. Many plains communities used nearly every piece of a buffalo, from horns and hooves to sinew and stomach lining, wasting almost nothing. Each part belonged to a different task, a different season, a different prayer. You watch someone stretch a long strip of sinew between their hands. They scrape away the last bits of tissue until the fiber gleams in the dim light. Once dried, these strands become threads stronger than anything mass-produced in the modern world. It was used for bowstrings, stitching clothes, tying tools, and even reinforcing winter shelters. Your fingers itch with curiosity, so they hand you a small piece to examine. It feels firm, flexible, and strangely warm despite the cold. Nearby, someone tends a boiling pot filled with bones. The steam rises in a thick column, carrying the scent of marrow. The process of cracking buffalo bones to extract fat was essential in winter, when calories mattered more than flavor. The fat could be eaten straight, mixed into dried meat, or melted into lamp fuel. As you shift closer to the fire, a curious little detail surfaces in your memory. Some families roasted the smaller bones until they crumbled easily, then sprinkled the powder into soups for extra nutrition. It sounds simple, but it carried a surprising boost of warmth and strength. You rise and walk toward a group carefully folding a massive hide. It takes several people to manage its weight. They fold it like a heavy blanket, pressing edges together and rolling it tightly. Once prepared, these hides become essential winter assets. You run your hand along the surface. The hair still clings thickly to one side, soft and insulating. These full hair hides often served as bedding during the coldest nights. Curling into one felt like sleeping inside a portable shelter. A young person demonstrates how the hide can be stretched into a shield against wind when crossing open plains. You smile at the idea of someone holding a giant buffalo hide like a windbreaker while trudging through snowdrifts. Practicality here often had a touch of creative improvisation, and it makes you appreciate even more how survival is shaped by experimentation passed from generation to generation. Someone calls your attention to a set of tools laid out on another hide. Bone awls gleam in the pale winter light. A scraper rests beside them, sharp and smooth. These tools shaped daily life in winter. You pick up an awl and turn it in your fingers. The surface feels polished by years of use, its tip honed to a fine point perfect for piercing thick leather. A specialist who once studied surviving artifacts noted that certain awls were made from the leg bones of buffalo, because those bones carried a dense strength, unmatched by other parts. You feel that sturdiness now as you press a fingertip gently against the tip. On your left, a woman adds crushed, dried buffalo meat to a bowl of melted fat, stirring with slow, practiced movements. She adds a handful of berries preserved from summer. The mixture is beginning to thicken. You watch the transformation with fascination. This is the creation of a food that would sustain families through months of bitter cold. Pemmican. High in energy, long-lasting, and compact, it served as the perfect winter ration. You dip your finger into a small bit offered to you and taste it. The flavor is intense, earthy, and slightly sweet from the berries. It hits your tongue with a surprising depth, and warmth spreads through your body almost instantly. The woman smiles quietly at your reaction. She tells you how different families had their own preferred ratios of fat to meat to berries. You imagine groups gathered in early winter comparing batches, each convinced their version was the superior blend. The conversation makes you laugh softly. Even in harsh conditions, human nature finds room for pride in craft. A few steps away, several people stand around a set of drying racks. Strips of hide hang from the top, half-tanned, and waiting for another round of scraping. You run your fingers along one strip. It has a roughness that promises durability once finished. These winter hides often became boots, mittens, and parka-like coats. You picture someone walking across the frozen plains wrapped in layers of this material, each piece stitched with care, each stitch an anchor against the cold. A soft debate rises among a small cluster of elders working nearby. They speak about how different tribes historically approached the final stages of tanning in cold weather. Some elders insist scraping during low humidity produced the best results. Others claim the opposite, insisting that finishing the hide on a slightly warmer day created more supple leather. There is no agreement, only gentle back-and-forth murmurings that make you smile. It is a reminder that knowledge is never static. Even among experts, interpretation shifts like snowdrifts in the wind. You pick up a buffalo horn lying beside a workbench. It is long, curved, and surprisingly heavy. Someone explains how horns were turned into ladles, cups, spoons, or even decorative pieces used during winter ceremonies. The smooth inner surface shines faintly when you tilt it toward the sun. A memory flickers of a story where people once carved small flutes from hollowed horns to mimic the calls of certain birds. You hold the horn close and imagine someone coaxing music from its empty chamber in the quiet of a winter evening. You sense movement behind you and turn. A young person carries a large buffalo stomach lining stretched into a rounded pouch. They lay it gently on the ground and fill it with snow. This lining serves as a sturdy winter water container because snow inside melts slowly without leaking. You lift the edge and feel the surprising strength of the membrane. Even without modern materials, people knew how to create containers capable of holding liquids through extreme conditions. Another group works with hooves. Their rhythmic scraping fills the air with a steady, almost soothing sound. Once cleaned and boiled, buffalo hooves produce glue strong enough to mend tools or reinforce bindings. You watch the process with interest as the hooves soften in boiling water. A faint smell rises from the pot, not unpleasant but earthly and distinct. It mixes with the aroma of smoke, forming an unexpected but strangely comforting winter perfume. As the sun climbs a little higher, the work continues. People move in fluid patterns, each task feeding into another. Nothing is wasted, nothing is frivolous. Every piece of this enormous animal becomes a lifeline. You take in the full scene and marvel at the depth of this relationship. Buffalo are not simply hunted here. They are understood, respected, and woven into every winter story. You look around once more. The hides, the tools, the food, the laughter, the quiet focus. Everything connects. Everything matters. Winter on the plains was never survived by toughness alone. It was survived through intimate knowledge of the buffalo, through respect for its spirit, and through the shared effort of transforming its gifts into fuel, warmth, shelter, and memory. A gust of snowflakes sweeps across the work area, and people pause to shield their eyes. You tighten your coat, breathe in the cold air, and walk closer to the fire pit where fresh strips of meat are smoking gently. The scent rises around you like a blessing. You feel warmer already. You step away from the work area, brushing snow from your sleeves as you follow a faint path toward another cluster of activity. The cold presses closer now, creeping through the edges of your clothing. That familiar sting on your fingertips reminds you why winter attire on the Great Plains had to be brilliant, not merely functional. You feel the weight of the season in every breath, which makes the scene ahead all the more impressive. A group of women sits in a semicircle, surrounded by hides, sinew thread, bone needles, and rolls of softened leather. Winter clothing does not appear here by accident. It is crafted with purpose, knowledge, and a kind of subtle artistry that reveals itself only upon close inspection. You settle beside them, watching the slow, steady dance of hands, weaving warmth into existence. One woman pulls a thick bison hide across her lap and begins trimming it with confident precision. Another sorts strips of tanned deer hide, lining them by texture and thickness. You notice the contrast immediately. Buffalo hides bring weight and insulation, while deer hides offer pliability for joints and finer stitches. This pairing is no coincidence. One reliable observation from early anthropologists notes that winter clothing often combined hides from multiple animals to balance warmth, flexibility, and durability. You run your fingers through a pile of materials and feel how each one contributes something unique. Nearby, a woman threads sinew through a bone needle with a fluid motion that comes from lifelong practice. She gestures for you to come closer and hands the needle to you for a moment. Sinew thread feels slightly sticky at first, but once pulled taut, it becomes strong enough to withstand brutal cold without snapping. The needle, carved smooth from a buffalo bone, sits light in your palm. You try passing the thread through a small hole in a hide scrap, and it glides through far easier than you expect. The woman gives a soft laugh, pleased at your surprise, and returns to her work with renewed speed. A little farther away, a young girl arranges tufts of fur into neat piles. She runs her hands through each tuft, sorting by softness and length. These will be used to line mittens, moccasins, and hoods. You notice how the downy fur catches the light, turning almost gold in the winter sun. A lesser-known detail rises in your memory. Some families preferred using the winter fur from the bellies of antelope for lining because it was incredibly soft and trapped heat exceptionally well. You reach out and pick up a tuft of similar fur, feeling its delicate warmth against your palm. It almost seems impossible that such light softness could stand against the harsh wind outside, yet you know it can. You move closer to a woman shaping a pair of winter moccasins. She layers two hides together, with fur turned inward so it hugs the foot in warm embrace. She sprinkles a handful of powdered dried grass inside the lining, explaining quietly how the grass absorbs moisture and keeps toes dry. The sound of the dried grass brushing against the hide is soft, almost musical. When she ties the final knot, you can see how sturdy the moccasins look. She hands one to you to try on. You slip your foot inside and feel immediate warmth spread through your toes. The combination of hide, fur, and herbal treatment makes the moccasin feel almost alive, molded to your shape without effort. Someone calls your attention to a long coat spread out across the snow. It is heavy, lined with thick winter fur, and stitched together with astonishing precision. The outer surface glows a deep, rich brown. You kneel, running your palm slowly along the smooth hide. It feels like touching warmth crafted into form. A few stitches catch your eye. Not decorative exactly, but carefully placed to mimic an animal's natural muscle lines. A quiet but fascinating insight from museum specialists comes to mind now. Certain winter garments were intentionally patterned after the way buffalo musculature curved along the body, creating both strength and symbolic connection. You study the coat and realize how elegantly practical that design is. Across from you, an older woman works on a hood. She attaches strips of fur so thick they create a border that shields the face from wind and blowing snow. You watch as she gently tucks each edge beneath another, creating an overlapping pattern like shingles on a roof. She tells you in a low voice that this method helps snow slide off instead of melting against the skin. You nod deeply, realizing how many generations of winter endurance shaped such wisdom. A lively discussion begins near the center of the group. They are comparing sewing techniques used for different tribes and regions. Some prefer stitching from the inside out, hiding each seam. Others argue that exposed stitches allow faster repairs in extreme weather. The conversation is friendly, animated, and full of subtle pride. You lean forward, absorbing every word. Specialists today continue to debate which technique offered the most durability in deep cold, and you can hear that centuries-old disagreement echoing in the present moment. It is strangely comforting to know that even experts of the past had spirited opinions about the best way to keep warm. Someone beside you begins crafting a pair of snow mitts. The mitts are enormous compared to modern gloves, thick as pillows, and shaped to trap warm air around the hands. She fills the interior with soft fur, and seals the outer layer with waterproofed hide, treated with animal fat. When she lifts the completed mitt, it looks like something that could defy even the coldest wind. You slip your hand into one and feel absorbed by warmth, so complete it makes your entire arm relax. Another person works on a decorative strip meant for the trim of a winter parka. The designs are geometric, carved into dyed hide and sewn with fine stitches. At first they seem purely ornamental, but when you tilt the strip in your hands, you notice the pattern follows a sequence that could reflect migration routes or family lineage. You breathe in, realizing that clothing here is not only survival, it is storytelling, identity, memory woven into wearable form. You shift your gaze toward a man preparing a set of leggings. He rubs the leather with a stone dipped in a mixture of animal fat and scented herbs. The aroma rises into the air, soothing your senses. The treatment makes the hide both flexible and water-resistant. He explains that good leggings must bend easily at the knee without cracking in the cold. You watch him stretch a finished piece between his hands. The leather moves like cloth, soft but strong. A girl nearby tests a newly finished winter cloak by shaking snow onto it. The flakes slide off instantly, leaving the surface perfectly dry. She beams with pride, and others tease her lightly, telling her that she shakes snow off like a proud wolf returning from a hunt. You laugh quietly, appreciating how humor flows naturally even in midwinter tasks. As you continue observing, you notice how everyone works in rhythm with one another. Stitches, scraping, trimming, shaping, soft laughter, quiet conversation, the soft crunch of snow beneath shifting feet. Winter clothing creation becomes its own kind of music. You rub your own sleeves, imagining how it would feel to wear the full collection of garments produced here. A coat heavy with warmth, leggings that move with your body, moccasins that turn cold ground into gentle cushion, a hood that shields your face like a soft fortress. Before you leave, someone places a finished garment in your lap. It is a short, fur-lined wrap meant to sit around the shoulders. You run your fingers along the inside. The fur feels impossibly warm, the hide smooth and flexible. You lift it to your face, breathing in the faint scent of smoke, herbs, and leather. It smells like winter survival itself. You drape it across your shoulders and rise. The weight settles comfortably around you. As you walk away from the sewing circle, the wind presses against your back, but now it only brushes you lightly instead of cutting deep. You feel a new layer of winter knowledge wrapped around you, crafted by hands, skilled in turning the cold itself into something you can withstand. You head toward the edge of camp, where the snow lies deeper, softer, and less trampled by everyday footsteps. The wind glides across the ground in long, sweeping strokes, sculpting the drifts into pale waves that curl and settle like frozen dunes. The sun sits low, creating bright flecks across the surface that make your eyes squint. This is the part of winter that challenges movement more than anything else. You lift your foot, sink slightly, then lift again. The effort is real. Without tricks and tools, traveling in deep winter would feel like walking through sand that bites back. A cluster of people huddles near a wooden rack, where long, flat frames lean in a crooked row. Their shapes look familiar. Snowshoes, though not the delicate, wide editions in modern sports stores. These are heavier, sturdier, and made with rawhide lacing stretched tightly across wood. One established observation from Northern Plains communities explains that snowshoes were used in specific conditions rather than daily travel. Deep powder or long hunts called for them, while hard-crusted snow made them unnecessary. You pick up one frame and feel its weight. It is lighter than it looks, but still solid enough to resist the world beneath it. Someone gestures for you to try a pair. The snowshoes bend gently beneath your feet as you fasten the bindings around your moccasins. You take a careful step. The snow holds you. You take another. Instead of sinking, you glide across the surface with surprising ease. A ripple of amusement travels through the group as you wobble for balance. Once you find the rhythm, the movement begins to feel strangely graceful. Wide, slow steps, gentle placement. Lift, slide, settle. A young boy darts past you on a smaller pair, kicking up glittering snow as he races across the open ground. Laughter trails behind him like a warm ribbon in the cold air. His motions are practiced, almost effortless. You watch him turn sharply and realize you would topple instantly if you tried the same maneuver. Skill comes from long winters and many falls. Nearby, someone drags a small sled fashioned from thin branches, secured with rawhide lashings. It glides smoothly along the top layer of snow. You squat beside it, touching the smooth runners. A lesser-known detail flickers in your mind. These lightweight sleds were sometimes pulled by people rather than dogs in regions where dog use was uncommon. Hunters used them to bring home meat or haul firewood, and families could use them to transport heavier bundles when moving camp through snowy terrain. When you lift one end, it feels balanced and surprisingly sturdy. A man demonstrates how the sled can be steered by shifting weight and adjusting the front runners with a simple rope. His hands move confidently, the rope responding like a well-trained limb. He sets the sled on a slope of packed snow and nudges it gently. It slides forward in a straight, smooth line, humming softly over the icy crust. The run is short but elegant. You feel a childlike desire to try it yourself, letting cold wind rush past your cheeks. On your right, two women shape long poles from willow branches. They scrape the bark with stone tools, creating slim, smooth staffs used for testing snow depth. You watch them press the point into a drift. The pole sinks only halfway before hitting firm ground. She nods approvingly, muttering that the drift is safe enough to cross. In deeper accumulations, these poles save lives. They reveal hidden pockets of soft snow that could swallow a person waist deep. You pick up a pole and test it yourself, enjoying the satisfying resistance as it meets solid layers beneath the surface. A man calls for your attention and points toward the open plains. You follow him, stepping carefully with your snowshoes. He shows you faint lines where herds once traveled even in winter. The tracks appear only as shallow shadows beneath the snow, but he reads them with confidence. The ground beneath your feet feels firmer here. Buffalo often tamp down the snow during migrations, leaving clear pathways for people to follow. An intriguing note shared by some plains elders suggests that these paths acted as natural guides during blizzards. When visibility dropped, hunters could feel the ground and identify buffalo trails by their density and shape. You imagine yourself lost in a whiteout, hands tracing the hardened surface, grateful for an old trail that becomes a silent guide. The man kneels and picks up a handful of snow, explaining the difference between the crunchy outer crust and the softer layers beneath. His lesson is simple yet essential. Travel depends on texture. Crusted snow allows quick crossings. Loose drifts demand tools. Hard ice requires caution. You listen carefully, committing the layers to memory. Winter travel is not just physical skill. It is sensory awareness, knowing how the snow sounds and feels under each footstep. The conversation shifts to wind. One woman points to the long lines etched across the plains. These ridges form where the wind deposits snow in steady, gradual layers. They can either help or hinder movement. Follow the low ridges, and you walk with the wind at your back, letting it push you gently forward. Cross the ridges at the wrong angle, and you sink in soft pockets hidden between them. You look across the landscape and marvel at how much the wind shapes not just the weather, but the pathways of winter travel. A lively exchange begins among the older hunters. They compare memories of winter chases long ago. One insists that snowshoes gave him the fastest approach on deep powder days. Another laughs and says he preferred running bareboot on crusted snow because his feet knew every bump and dip. Their stories overlap. You hear descriptions of skimming across icy fields, jumping over frozen creek beds, sliding down slopes on hides, using snowdrifts to hide from wary prey. Skilled winter travel was part strategy, part instinct, part pure nerve. You try walking again, this time following a shallow curve along the ridge. Your snowshoes glide, rising and falling with the land. The cold air pricks your cheeks, but your body warms as you find the rhythm. Lift, place, slide. Lift, place, slide. It becomes almost meditative. You feel the ancient echo of people who made this motion part of daily life, their paths worn into the very memory of the land. One man hands you a longer pole and gestures for you to practice pushing yourself forward on a slope. The pole helps maintain balance as you move uphill. You grip it firmly and feel how the snowshoed foot anchors itself before each step. The climb is slow but steady. When you reach the top, a wide sweep of the plains opens before you. White, silent, endless. You breathe it in, the raw beauty and the sharp challenge wrapped in the same view. Before you head back toward camp, the group prepares a final demonstration. A young woman steps onto a buffalo hide placed on the snow. Two people hold ropes tied to the front edge. With a sharp signal, they begin pulling her across the ground. She glides smoothly, laughing, as snow sprays gently behind her. This hide-dragging technique, often used for transporting gear or children, turns the snowy landscape into a workable highway. You watch her spin slightly, her hair flying, and you feel a spark of joy ripple through the frozen air. You return to the heart of camp with your snowshoes still strapped on, feeling taller, lighter, and somehow more connected to the winter world. Every step reminds you that travel on the plains was never random. It was thoughtful movement shaped by tools, terrain, wind, and instinct. You shake off the last bits of powder as you reach the lodge entrance, warmed by the knowledge that you now understand the art of winter travel a little better. You wake again to the soft crackle of dawn light on snow, and today the camp feels quieter than usual. People move with a different kind of focus. Their voices drop into softer tones. Their steps become controlled, almost silent. It takes only a moment for you to realize why. Winter hunting is not a casual affair. It requires precision, patience, and the ability to listen to a landscape that hides more than it reveals. You lift the flap of the lodge and step into air so cold it almost startles a gasp out of you. The sun is still low, and the world looks washed clean, a blank white canvas waiting for signs only practiced eyes can read. A small gathering stands near the edge of camp, checking bows, tightening straps on quivers, adjusting the fit of their mitts. You join them, feeling the quiet anticipation settle across your shoulders like a soft weight. Today is not about a grand hunt. It is about locating smaller game that keeps winter meals varied and spirits steady. Rabbits, foxes, birds, maybe even a lone deer sheltering in the wooded draws. But winter animals move like whispers. They leave faint trails, minimal noise, and they blend perfectly into the frozen world. As you follow the hunters, the crunch of your footsteps feels almost too loud. One woman signals you to pause and shows you a set of prints. They are tiny, delicate, barely indenting the snow's crust. She kneels and brushes the tracks lightly with her fingertips. One reliable detail from observations of winter hunting practices reminds you that following fresh tracks required incredible sensitivity. Hunters read not only shape but depth, spacing, and direction. The woman taps the snow and murmurs that these are from a rabbit that passed just before sunrise. You lean closer and try to see what she sees, noticing how the prints angle slightly toward a thicket of low brush. A young man gestures for you to follow him. He moves quietly, the snow barely yielding under his feet. You walk as slowly as you can manage. The cold air carries every sound with sharp clarity. A twig snapping half a mile away could ring out like a drum. The man points toward a small indentation beneath a cedar branch. He lifts the branch gently and reveals a hollow where a rabbit recently sheltered. You touch the edge of the hollow. It is faintly warm. The creature is nearby. They spread out, keeping distance but maintaining line of sight. You feel the tension rise. Not fear, but that bright alertness that comes when survival depends on awareness. A moment later, someone raises a hand. You spot movement, a flash of white against white, subtle but unmistakable. The rabbit darts forward, swift and fluid. An arrow flies. It strikes cleanly, quickly. The animal stops moving. Silence falls again. No celebration, only respectful nods. You approach with the group as they lift the rabbit, brushing snow from its fur. An interesting nuance taught by elders is that winter hunts often required acknowledging the animal's spirit before processing it. A quiet word of thanks is whispered. You bow your head slightly, feeling the weight of that tradition settle warmly into your chest. They wrap the rabbit in a small hide and mark the spot for later return. The group then shifts toward a more wooded area where the land dips and rises in soft curves. As you walk, someone pauses and points to strange markings in the snow. They look like faint lines, broken by patches of wind-blown powder. A seasoned tracker explains that such shallow etchings come from a fox weaving through the brush. He demonstrates how the depth of each step tells the animal's weight and pace. You try reading the trail yourself, but to your eyes it looks like nothing more than random disturbance. He smiles at your confusion and assures you that such skill takes years, sometimes a lifetime. A peculiar little anecdote drifts through your memory just then. Some hunters believed foxes deliberately circled back on their own tracks to confuse pursuers, almost like playing a small winter prank. You picture a fox smirking behind a snowbank, enjoying the game. Whether the belief is literal or simply a playful teaching tool, the idea comforts you. Even in winter, humor moves between species in subtle ways. As you continue forward, the snow grows deeper. A woman taps your arm and tilts her head. You listen. At first you hear nothing. Then slowly, a faint scratching sound reaches your ears. She points toward the base of a cottonwood tree. A bird has been digging for seeds tucked beneath the roots. You inch closer, careful not to disturb the moment. It is a prairie chicken, feathers fluffed against the cold. Before you can blink, she fires a small, blunt-tipped arrow designed for stunning rather than piercing. The bird drops gently, unharmed except for the shock. She picks it up with practiced hands. Its warmth radiates into her palms. They will use every part of it, from feathers to bone. You continue onward, the air growing heavier with cold. Your lungs feel tight, your breath rising like smoke. The sky above shifts grey, promising another storm. Yet the hunters push forward because winter meals must be secured before the weather traps everyone inside again. A lively discussion begins among the group as you pause near an outcrop. They compare ways different tribes interpreted winter animal behavior. Some hunters insisted that deer moved less during the coldest days. Others argued the opposite, claiming the animals traveled farther, searching for exposed grass. Opinions clash softly, like snowflakes brushing together. Modern researchers remain uncertain which interpretation holds more truth, and you can feel that ancient debate alive in the air as the hunters exchange stories. You climb a small ridge overlooking a frozen creek. The wind sweeps across the surface, lifting crystals that dance in spiraling patterns. One of the older hunters gestures for silence. He points at a set of tracks barely visible near the creek's edge. They lead toward a narrow gap in the ice. If you look closely, you can see faint brush marks where hooves slipped. A deer crossed here recently. The idea sends a jolt of energy through the group. They follow the trail carefully, stepping lightly to avoid cracking thin ice. The trail leads to a dense stand of trees. Inside, the world grows still. Snow muffles sound, creating a kind of reverent quiet. You feel your heartbeat slow. Everyone spreads out again, moving in careful arcs. You spot movement in the shadows. A deer, its coat blending seamlessly with the bark, stands still as stone. Its ears twitch. For a moment you feel its gaze brush your skin like a whisper. Then it bolts. The chase erupts softly, not chaotic but measured. Hunters move with fluid precision, cutting off angles, predicting the deer's path. You scramble to follow. Your feet slide on hidden patches of ice. Your breath pulses hot in your throat. An arrow flies. It misses. Another flies. It grazes the deer's flank. The animal leaps a fallen trunk, snow bursting behind it. Finally, at the edge of a clearing, a final arrow strikes true, deep enough to bring the deer down quickly and with dignity. The moment settles heavy and quiet. The hunters gather around, hands resting on their knees, breath rising in slow plumes. A quiet word of gratitude is spoken. You place your hand gently on the animal's side, feeling the heat still there. The hunters work together to field dress the deer, their hands moving in practiced, almost ceremonial rhythm. The cold preserves the meat instantly, and the smell of fresh hide mixes with the crisp winter air. You help lift the deer onto a sled made from a buffalo hide stretched over willow poles. The sled glides smoothly as they pull it back toward camp. Your arms ache from the effort, but your spirit feels strangely strengthened, as if this winter landscape has offered you a glimpse into its ancient contract of respect and survival. When you return to camp, the light is fading, turning the snow a soft blue. Smoke rises from distant fires, and you can already smell stew cooking. As you unfasten your gear, you realize how much the land has taught you today. Winter hides everything, yes, but it also reveals truths, only to those who move slowly, listen deeply, and honor what they take. You wake to a different kind of quiet, one that feels layered and cautious. When you slip outside, the cold air carries a subtle sharpness, the kind that warns you winter sickness is never far from camp. You rub your palms together and watch your breath curl into the soft morning light. People move slowly, bundled thickly, tending to chores that demand care rather than speed. Winter hunting may keep bellies full, but winter illnesses threaten the body in quieter ways, and everyone here knows how fragile health becomes when the world is frozen solid. You follow the scent of crushed herbs drifting from a small shelter at the edge of camp. Inside, several women sit near a fire, grinding dried plants with rounded stones. You settle beside them as they sort bundles of roots, leaves and berries, their fingers moving with practiced familiarity. One well-noted tradition from ethnobotanical studies tells you that plains healers often dried medicinal plants in late summer so they remained potent through the cold months. You watch as they crumble tiny leaves of yarrow into a bowl. The smell is sharp, almost minty, and it clears your nose instantly. A woman stirs a pot suspended over the fire. Inside, a mixture of powdered bark and dried wild mint simmers in slow ripples. She lifts a small ladle, lets a drop fall onto her wrist, then nods approvingly. This remedy helps ease winter coughs, she explains quietly. You watch her fill a small carved cup and hand it to a young man who has been coughing since dawn. He drinks it slowly, steam rising around his face like a soft cloud. His shoulders relax almost immediately. Nearby, another healer crushes juniper berries with a deliberate rhythm. Each berry releases a bright, resinous smell that cuts through the thick winter air. She mixes the berries with warm water to make a wash used on sore joints and frostbitten fingers. You roll a berry between your fingertips, surprised by how oily it feels even when dried. The healer smiles softly, placing your hand over the bowl so you can inhale the rising steam. It smells like pine forests, like clear mountain air stored inside a tiny fruit. As you observe, an unexpected little tradition comes to mind. Some families placed small sachets of sage or sweetgrass near sleeping areas during winter, not only for scent but because they believed it discouraged restless dreams and nighttime chills. You picture a child curled under a heavy hide, comforted by the soft fragrance drifting upward. A young girl approaches, carrying a bundle wrapped in cloth. She opens it to reveal dried roots twisted like tiny wooden spirals. The healers nod appreciatively. These are prairie turnip roots, not just food, but an ingredient used to make a thick paste for soothing sore throats. The girl watches carefully as the roots are ground into powder. She mimics the motions, learning, remembering. Winter medicine is not a single person's duty. It is knowledge carried by many hands. One elder explains that plants gathered before the first frost hold the strongest healing power. Her voice is low, warm, and she speaks as if every plant listens. She opens a pouch of dried willow bark and sprinkles some into a bowl. You recognize the scent immediately, earthy and slightly sweet. Willow bark contains natural compounds that ease pain. Even today, researchers marvel at how precisely indigenous healers understood its properties long before chemical science gave it a name. You lean closer, mesmerized by the fine powder drifting through the air like brown snow. Across the shelter, a small pot emits a different aroma, deep and spicy. Someone tells you it is a mixture burned to cleanse the air when sickness spreads. Smoke curls upward in a slow spiral. They wave it gently around the lodge openings, letting the fragrance cling to the hide walls. The smell is grounding, calming, almost protective. You feel your lungs loosen simply by breathing it in. A conversation rises among the healers as they compare various winter remedies passed down through generations. One insists that boiling cedar branches produces the best steam bath for clearing congestion. Another argues that the steam should come from spruce instead. Their tones are gentle but passionate, each certain of their method. Modern anthropologists still discuss these variations, unsure whether regional differences in tree species or pure tradition shaped the contrasting practices. You enjoy the quiet debate, watching how they laugh and tease each other while remaining deeply respectful. You notice a small bone tool tucked beside a pouch of herbs. It is smooth and narrow, used for scraping frostbite blisters to keep them clean without tearing skin. The idea makes you wince, but the healer explains kindly that it prevents infection, which can be more dangerous than the blister itself. She places your hand on the tool to feel its warmth from the fire. You realize instantly how gentle its curve is, shaped to protect rather than harm. A boy enters the shelter with reddened cheeks and a runny nose. His mother sits him near the fire, wrapping a thick hide around his shoulders. One healer crushes a pinch of dried plants and mixes them with warm water before offering it to him. The child sips slowly, grinning sheepishly as the warmth spreads across his chest. You ruffle his hair, remembering how winter illness never fully leaves a camp's worries. Outside, someone calls your name. You step out into the cold and follow a line of footprints to a second lodge. Inside, you find a tiny steam tent built for healing. Heated stones glow at the center, surrounded by herbs placed carefully on the floor. The moment you enter, warm, humid air envelops you, filling your lungs with relief. A healer instructs you to sit, and she sprinkles a bit of water over the stones. A burst of fragrant steam rises instantly, carrying cedar, mint, and a hint of sweetgrass. The space fills with heat, so soothing it nearly makes your eyes close. Steam baths like this appear often in accounts of winter life, used to expel congestion, relax muscles, and cleanse the spirit. You sit quietly, listening to the slow hiss of steam. Your skin prickles with warmth, your breath deepens. Outside, the wind moans faintly, but inside the lodge you feel sheltered in a world of healing. When the steam begins to fade, the healer offers you a small cloth dipped in warm herbal water. You press it gently to your face. The warmth spreads through your cheeks and jaw. It feels like sinking into a deep, peaceful exhale. Before leaving, the elder places a small bundle of dried leaves in your hand. She tells you it is good for calming the lungs on a cold morning. You thank her and slip the bundle inside your coat. As you step outside again, the cold no longer feels sharp. It feels manageable, softened by the knowledge that winter brings challenges but also answers. You walk back through the camp, watching as people breathe steam into the air, tending their fires, checking their shelters, moving slowly but steadily through the day. Winter may test every part of the body, but it also draws communities closer, weaving healing and care into the rhythm of survival. You pull your coat tighter, breathing in the faint hint of herbs drifting from the bundle at your chest. You feel protected, supported, and ready for whatever winter brings next. You walk toward the far edge of camp, where the land dips into a shallow basin, a place where a narrow river runs even in the coldest months. Today it lies sealed under a thick layer of ice, smooth and faintly blue beneath the pale winter sun. Your breath curls into the air as you approach, and the snow under your boots crunches with a satisfying crispness. A few people are already gathered near the riverbank, carrying tools wrapped in hides to keep them from freezing. Their quiet voices carry just enough warmth to make the morning feel hopeful. You kneel beside them and peer across the surface. At first it appears perfectly still, but then you notice faint ripples below the translucent ice, a reminder that life continues, even in the depths of winter. One clear historical insight from accounts of plains communities explains that winter fishing was often done at specific spots, where rivers narrowed or where springs fed warmer water into the flow beneath the ice. These pockets kept fish moving when most of the world had fallen silent. You feel the subtle pull of that truth now as you look at the frozen surface, knowing there is an entire hidden world below. A man crouches at the edge and taps the ice with the end of a heavy wooden tool. The sound echoes with a low, solid thud. He taps again, listening. The ice is thick, but not too thick. Good fishing ice. He gestures for you to move closer. Together, several people begin to clear away loose snow, revealing the smooth, icy surface beneath. The cold stings your fingertips, but the excitement of the task warms you from within. They position a sharpened bone chisel at the chosen spot and strike it with a mallet made from a carved buffalo horn. Each blow creates a deep, crackling sound that vibrates through your arms. Ice chips fly in small bursts. You lean in and help scoop away shards with a flat wooden scraper. Soon a narrow opening appears, a dark circle against the pale ice. When the final layer gives way, cold water rushes up, sending a tiny spray onto your gloves. It smells clean, fresh, and startlingly alive. A woman kneels beside the hole and tests the depth with a long willow pole. She nods, satisfied, then begins to arrange a small pile of bait near her feet. She uses strips of frozen rabbit gut and slivers of dried meat, pressing them between her fingers to soften them. A lesser-known detail recorded in some oral histories mentions that certain families added crushed juniper berries to the bait, believing the scent carried better through frigid water. Whether the fish actually preferred it or not, the tradition lingers in your mind now, as you watch her sprinkle something aromatic onto the bait. Another person lays out a line made from sinew twisted into a firm, resilient cord. Attached to it is a hook carved from bone, smoothed to a fine curve. It gleams faintly in the morning light. You hold it gently, impressed by how something so delicate can handle the weight of a thrashing fish. The hook is tied with precise knots you have seen used in other winter tools. It feels strong, dependable, crafted with intentional care. The woman lowers the line slowly into the hole, letting it sink into the cold darkness below. She holds the cord lightly between her fingers, eyes half closed, listening to the water with her hands. You mimic her posture, fascinated by the stillness. She murmurs that winter fishing is more about feeling than seeing. The cold water numbs your fingertips, but you keep your grip steady, imagining what it must be like to sense the tiny movements of a curious fish below. A quiet conversation rises among the group. They compare different techniques used by families along the plains. Some prefer long lines anchored to sticks driven into the ice. Others choose hand lines for better control. A few insist that larger holes attract more fish, while others argue that smaller ones are easier to manage. The debate floats gently across the frozen river like drifting breath. Modern specialists still discuss these variations too, unsure which approach was most efficient across different regions. Listening to the group now, you can hear how each method carries a story, a memory, a moment when the river rewarded someone's choice. One man begins chipping a second hole a short distance away. You help scoop the ice and notice how the cold creeps quickly through your gloves. The process becomes hypnotic. Strike, crack, scoop, breathe. Strike, crack, scoop, breathe. Soon another dark circle opens, steam rising faintly from its surface. You peer inside and see swirling shadows, the faint glimmer of fish scales moving somewhere below. The sight sends a small thrill up your spine. A sudden tug interrupts your thoughts. The woman beside you straightens, eyes sharp. Her sinew line trembles with life. She whispers for you to pull gently. You wrap your fingers around the cord and lift. The weight shifts, resists, then pulls back. Your heart pounds. Slowly, carefully, you guide the line upward. A flash of silver breaks the surface. Then the fish emerges fully, flapping wildly against the cold air. You gasp as she quickly grabs it, securing it with experienced hands. Its scales shimmer like tiny mirrors reflecting the winter sun. The woman nods approvingly as she places the fish on a clean patch of snow. Steam rises from its warm body. You stare at it, your breath caught in your throat. This is more than a catch. It is a winter victory born from patience and listening. You feel a burst of pride warm your chest. Other lines begin to twitch. In quiet succession, more fish are pulled from the icy depths. Conversations soften as people focus on the work. The snow around you becomes sprinkled with shimmering bodies. Each fish is handled with care, cleaned with swift movements, and wrapped tightly in hide to keep it from freezing too fast. You watch someone remove the air bladder from a fish and set it aside. They tell you it will be used later as a waterproof pouch for storing small tools. You marvel at how even in winter, nothing goes to waste. The sun climbs a little higher, casting long reflections across the frozen river. A light breeze sweeps snow across your boots. The camp feels far away now, and the world narrows to the soft creak of ice, the quiet murmurs of the group, and the dark, steady pulse of water beneath your feet. Before leaving, they show you a final tradition. Someone places a single, small piece of meat back into the fishing hole, letting it sink slowly out of sight. It is an offering of thanks, a gesture of respect for the river's generosity. You bow your head as it disappears into the cold. As you walk back to camp with the group, carrying bundles of fish wrapped neatly in hide, you notice the tracks you leave behind. Crisp, clear, winding across the snow like a path drawn by winter itself. You breathe deeply, feeling lighter, steadier. Ice fishing is not merely a task. It is an intimate conversation with the land, a silent exchange between humans and the unseen world below the frozen surface. Your hands throb with cold, but your spirit feels warm, buoyed by the quiet triumph of bringing life from beneath the ice. You barely settle back into camp when the wind begins to shift again. It comes first as a low hum along the ridge, then as a shiver in the hides of nearby lodges. You look up, the sky has lost its soft winter blue, replaced by a heavy grey that sinks lower with every passing minute. People glance at one another, their movements quickening. On the Great Plains, storms do not always announce themselves with grand drama. Sometimes they creep, gathering weight until the world transforms in a single, sweeping breath. You pull your coat tighter and follow a pair of scouts toward the camp's edge. They keep their eyes on the western sky, studying the way the light fades unevenly. One well-supported frontier account describes how experienced watchkeepers could sense an incoming blizzard simply by the way distant hills blurred at the seams. You see it now. The line where land meets sky turns fuzzy, almost liquid. That is the first warning. A woman kneels beside a snowdrift and pinches a handful of loose flakes. She lets them fall slowly through her fingers. The flakes scatter sideways instead of drifting straight down. That diagonal tumble means the upper winds are twisting, preparing to drop. She nods sharply. Time to brace the camp. People spring into motion. You help tighten the lashings around one lodge, pulling ropes firm and tying them in a double knot. The fiber roughens your palms. Snowflakes begin to fall faster, prickling your cheeks. You feel your heartbeat rise in tempo with the wind. Storm preparation is not frantic, but it carries its own urgency. Everyone knows what must be done, and they move with the calm quickness of long practice. A child calls out from nearby. You turn to see a group of youngsters gathered around a row of poles stacked with drying hides. Adults rush over to bring the hides inside, before the storm's moisture destroys their curing process. You help lift a heavy buffalo hide, rolling it across your arms. Its warmth feels good against your chest, even through winter layers. You carry it to a storage lodge and hang it from a wooden frame near the ceiling, where the air stays warmer. Outside again, the wind has risen into a moaning sweep. Loose snow twists into spiraling columns that dance unpredictably. Visibility shrinks. You can feel the storm taking shape around you. A man taps your shoulder and gestures for you to follow him toward a row of shallow snow walls built earlier in the season. These barriers redirect gusts around the lodges, reducing the force that hits directly. A surprisingly clever engineering trick, according to early explorers who marveled at how such low walls created calmer pockets of air near shelters. You help pack the snow walls with your mitts, reinforcing their edges before the storm fully arrives. Then the world shifts. The wind slams across the plains with a suddenness that steals your breath. Snow explodes around you in wild, frantic bursts. The air tastes like frost-bitten iron. You hunch your shoulders instinctively. White flecks smear across your vision. The ground disappears beneath swirling curtains of snow. A blizzard envelops the camp with total conviction. People shout short, purposeful instructions. You catch the voice of an elder, telling everyone to stay close to the rope lines. You look down and see the braided cord stretching between lodges. It serves as a guide during storms when the world turns into shapeless white. You grip the rope tightly as you move. Your eyelashes freeze together. Your breath condenses into tiny crystals that gather around your scarf. Every step becomes a test, the snow dragging at your boots. It feels like walking through a dream where the world keeps folding in on itself. And yet, beneath the chaos, you feel an odd sense of order. Plains families understood storms intimately. Survival depended on reading them, respecting them, and never assuming you could outmatch the cold. You duck into a lodge and feel a blast of warmth envelop you. Inside, people sit near the central fire, its glow painting soft halos on their faces. A pot of stew bubbles quietly, sending rich smells through the air. Someone hands you a cup. You drink gratefully, the heat sliding through your chest like liquid sunlight. The wind roars outside. Snow hits the walls hard enough to make the structure tremble. You notice small hands gripping a mother's arm, eyes wide with worry. She pulls her child close, whispering that storms like this always pass. You smile gently, hoping your presence adds one more layer of reassurance. The elders begin sharing quiet winter stories to steady the mood. One speaks of a time an entire camp survived a storm so fierce that even the buffalo huddled together for protection, their great bodies forming a living wall against the night. Another elder adds a remembered detail about watching sparks from a lodge fire dance along the hide as the storm threatened to rip the structure apart. His voice is calm, steady, grounding. A curious belief surfaces in your thoughts. Some Plains families said that winter winds carried the voices of old ancestors, not ghosts or omens, just echoes of guidance, reminding people to stay watchful and present. Listening to the storm now, you almost hear it yourself, a deep, whispering rhythm beneath the chaos. The storm intensifies. Snow finds its way through tiny seams and melts instantly on your warm coat. The fire crackles defiantly, its light pushing back against the storm's shadow. People continue tending the flames, adding wood in a steady cadence. The lodge feels like a breathing creature, resilient and alive. As the hours pass, the wind finally begins to soften. Snow no longer slams against the hide. Instead, it whispers. One of the elders pauses and tilts his head, listening carefully. He nods once, satisfied. The worst has passed. Now comes the quiet. You step outside with a handful of others. The storm has left a transformed world. Drifts tower like frozen waves. The horizon glows faintly, touched by the last light, filtered through thinning clouds. You breathe in deeply. The air is cold but calm, quiet but full. A few hunters check the lodge walls for damage. Others clear paths between shelters. People begin emerging slowly, brushing snow from their hair and sleeves. You feel a rush of admiration for this calm persistence. Weather may roar and threaten, but community steadiness is louder. Experts today still discuss how precisely Plains people predicted and responded to winter storms. Some argue these tactics developed purely from observation. Others insist spiritual interpretation played equal role in reading the land. Standing here now, you sense that both perspectives hold truth. Winter storms were scientific and spiritual at the same time, shaping survival with equal parts knowledge and reverence. You run your hand across a newly formed drift, its surface smooth as polished stone. Snow squeaks under your boots as you walk. You cannot help but smile. The storm has passed, and beneath all the wind and fury, the camp remains strong. You rise after the storm to find the world muffled under deep, unbroken snow. The air feels softer, almost tender, as if winter has paused to catch its breath. People move slowly around camp, not out of weariness, but out of awareness. After a blizzard, the focus shifts to those who need warmth the most. Children with small bodies that lose heat quickly, and elders whose bones feel every degree of cold. You pull your coat tighter and walk toward a lodge where quiet voices echo with gentle concern. Inside, the space feels warmer than usual. Several hides have been added around the walls, trapping even more heat. A handful of children sit near the fire, wrapped in furs so thick they resemble little bundles of winter itself. One child is braiding a scrap of sinew. Another is nibbling on a chunk of dried meat softened in warm broth. You sit beside them, letting the fire settle into your skin. A grandmother stirs the pot with a slow, steady rhythm, her hands moving in the same pattern they have used for decades. One carefully recorded cultural observation mentions that winter care on the Great Plains often followed a philosophy of shared warmth, where bodies gathered together deliberately to maintain heat. You notice it now as people sit shoulder to shoulder, forming a living shield against cold air that tries to creep in through tiny seams. The warmth radiates softly, comforting you in a way no single blanket ever could. A child hands you a small carved toy shaped like a horse. You hold it gently, feeling the smooth grain beneath your fingertips. Toys were not simply distractions here. They kept hands busy, soothed nerves, and built quiet resilience in a season when the world outside was relentless. You watch as the children invent a game, nudging carved figures through imaginary snowdrifts beside the fire. Their giggles rise like flurries of warmth. Near the fire, an elder leans forward with effort, lifting a bowl. You reach instinctively to help. Her hands are weathered, her knuckles swollen from a lifetime of cold seasons. She gives you a grateful smile. She sips slowly, breathing in the steam with closed eyes. A small detail from ethnographers comes to mind. Elders were often given richer broth during winter to keep their energy strong, even when appetite faded. You watch her drink and realize how much intention is woven into every winter action. Outside the lodge, you hear soft shuffling. A man enters, carrying an armful of small blankets made from rabbit skins. He shakes the snow off and hands them to the mothers gathered around the fire. Each blanket is incredibly soft, light but warm, perfect for tucking around babies or layering inside sleeping spaces. You run your fingers across one. It feels like touching a warm cloud. The man explains quietly that families often saved these blankets for the coldest days, knowing how effectively they trapped heat. You help arrange sleeping places by adding thick layers of grasses beneath the hides. The grasses create insulation and limit the cold that creeps through the ground. A young mother beside you plumps the bedding with care, ensuring no gaps remain. She tucks her infant into a fur-lined cradleboard, wrapping it snugly before leaning it near the fire where the temperature stays gentle and even. You marvel at the cradleboard's design. The interior is lined with soft hide, the outer shell solid enough to protect against drafts. The baby's tiny breath rises in steady puffs, perfectly content. A gentle conversation begins among the adults. They exchange quiet tips about keeping little ones warm. One mother praises the trick of heating small stones in the fire and wrapping them in hides to place at the foot of sleeping areas. Another mentions that rubbing rendered fat onto exposed skin helps prevent dryness and frostbite. Their voices mingle like woven threads, each sharing a piece of winter knowledge that has kept many children safe through harsh nights. One elder begins to hum a soft tune. The melody fills the lodge, soothing and slow. It drifts through the air like warm smoke. You feel your shoulders relax immediately. Someone joins with a harmony barely above a whisper. Winter songs like these were often used to calm nervous children during storms. Some modern researchers observe that such songs helped regulate breathing and lowered stress, though the people who created them needed no scientific explanation. They simply understood comfort. A small girl crawls into your lap, her fur-lined hood brushing your chin. She shows you her tiny mitten, stitched neatly with sinew. You turn it over in your hands, admiring the craftsmanship. She beams proudly, explaining that she helped with the stitching. Her confidence glows brighter than the fire. You slip the mitten back over her hand and tug it gently to secure it. She giggles and hugs your arm. Another lodge nearby houses several elders who ride out winter with extra care. You help deliver fresh broth to them. Inside, the air feels heavy with warmth. Elders sit in a circle, wrapped in robes, their faces illuminated by the soft flicker of firelight. One woman taps the ground with her staff and invites you closer. She speaks in a quiet voice about winter memories from her childhood. She recalls nights when storms lasted so long the world seemed made only of wind and snow, but still the people endured. She chuckles as she remembers a winter so cold that water froze in mid-pour if someone tossed it into the air. Her laughter is thin but full of life. A curious little anecdote from oral traditions springs to mind about people challenging each other to toss a ladle of boiling water upward just to watch it turn instantly into ice dust. Whether every story is literal or embellished, you feel the joy behind the memory. One of the elders adjusts a small pouch hanging from her belt. She tells you it contains dried sweetgrass, which she keeps near her during winter for its comforting scent. You inhale deeply as she opens it. The aroma is gentle and pleasant, a reminder of summer stored inside a tiny bundle. She explains that certain scents help soothe the mind when the world outside feels endless and white. You spend time patching small holes in the lodge covering, working with another adult to prevent drafts. Every crack matters. A finger-width seam can drain heat in minutes. As you work, the elder closest to you mentions how winter protocols varied from tribe to tribe. Some believed that all children should sleep tightly clustered together for warmth. Others arranged their beds by family groups. Scholars today still explore how these patterns differed, tracing subtle variations across the plains. You study the bedding arrangements and sense that each approach carries its own careful logic. As the day stretches on, the sky outside turns a soft lavender. Children nap beside the fire, elders sip warm drinks, and adults continue reinforcing comfort in small, steady ways. You carry extra water to the lodge. The steam from the pot fogs your eyelashes. You breathe it in, letting it soften your chest. You take one last slow look around the lodge. The fire glows gently. Sleepy faces melt into furs. Elders nod in quiet conversation. Children curl against warm bodies. You feel the pulse of community, of shared protection, of winter wisdom, shaped by countless generations who understood that survival begins with caring for the most vulnerable. You step outside again into the cooling dusk. Snow crunches beneath your boots. The wind has calmed, carrying only faint whispers now. Behind you, the lodge radiates warmth like a lantern in the frozen world. You walk toward the next task with a renewed sense of reverence for how winter shapes, not just bodies, but bonds. You drift toward the center of camp as evening deepens, drawn by the soft glow spilling from a large lodge where shadows flicker gently against the snow. The air outside has grown colder, sharper, and the sky above settles into a deep indigo. Nights like this make warmth irresistible, and stories even more so. You lift the lodge flap and step inside, greeted instantly by a rush of heat and the comforting smell of burning wood. The fire crackles at the center, its light turning everyone nearby into silhouettes edged with gold. You find a place near the back, settling onto a thick hide. Children gather close to the flame, eyes bright with anticipation. Adults relax around the edges, leaning back, shoulders finally unwinding after a long day of winter chores. Tonight is for stories, the kind that stretch slowly through the dark like a warm blanket. One documented insight from ethnographers reveals that winter was often considered the proper season for storytelling on the plains, a time when spirits listened more closely and people had space to reflect. You feel that truth now, humming gently in the air. The first storyteller leans forward, poking a long stick into the fire until sparks rise like dancing fireflies. His voice slips into the room like smoke, soft and steady. He begins painting a tale of a trickster figure who once raced the winter wind across the plains. Children laugh as he mimics the exaggerated flapping of arms and stumbling feet. His tone changes mid-story, growing deeper as he speaks of the trickster learning humility. You follow every shift in his voice, feeling the warmth of the tale settle into your bones. Next to you, a child whispers questions to her mother, who answers with patient smiles. Stories teach more than entertainment here. They carry history, values, humor, warnings, and hope through generations. Someone explains that tales of tricksters remind listeners that even cleverness has limits, and that good decisions keep people safe in a world full of unpredictable weather and animals. A woman takes the storyteller's place. She opens her palms over the fire, letting the heat warm her fingertips before speaking. Her story begins with the creation of stars, how each one gleamed with its own personality. Her voice is softer than the man's, but it carries a gentle strength. You listen as she describes stars dancing into the sky, one stubborn star refusing to move until it was bribed with a song. A quiet smile spreads across your face as you imagine the night sky bargaining for music. As she speaks, you catch the scent of sweetgrass drifting from a small braid hanging above the fire. Someone must have added a pinch earlier. The fragrance lingers in the air like a soft reminder of summer. Sitting here, surrounded by stories and warmth, you realize how deeply storytelling binds a community. The firelight becomes a living thread weaving past and present into one long, luminous fabric. A young man leans forward eagerly, ready to share the next tale. He begins with a legend about a great disappearing buffalo that could transform into a cloud when threatened. His hands sweep upward dramatically, making the children gasp in delight. While describing the buffalo's slow rising into the sky, he pauses to add a curious piece of lore he learned from his grandfather. According to one old memory, some hunters claim to see shapes of animals hidden in snow clouds, believing them to be reminders of past hunts. You glance toward the lodge entrance as a gust of wind nudges it gently, imagining what it would be like to search the sky for buffalo spirits. The fire pops loudly, sending a shower of tiny embers upward. The room settles deeper into the rhythm of the stories. An elder shifts forward next, her posture straight despite her age. Her voice flows like the low hum of winter itself. She shares a tale explaining why owls call through the night. She describes how, in a time long ago, an owl carried warnings across the plains for people who traveled too far during storms. Her tale blends wisdom with mystery, and you feel a small shiver ripple down your spine despite the warmth. She pauses to reflect, then adds something scholars have pondered for years. Many winter stories contain layered meanings, some lost to time, others understood only within families. Modern researchers still try to interpret symbols within these tales, debating whether certain animals represent seasons, virtues, or even celestial bodies. Listening now, you sense that the stories work on more than one level. They hold practical survival lessons tucked inside imaginative worlds. Someone near the fire begins drumming their fingers rhythmically on a wooden bowl. The soft beat enhances the atmosphere, helping everyone fall deeper into the spell of the stories. You notice a child mimicking the rhythm on their own knee, eyes half closed, absorbing everything without even realizing it. Another storyteller steps forward. He holds a carved staff that glows amber in the firelight. His story revolves around a young scout who once learned to navigate winter nights by listening instead of looking. He tells how the scout trained himself to hear cracks in distant ice, to sense the direction of the wind through tree groans, to read what animals were doing by their tiny footfalls in snow. You lean forward, mesmerized, realizing that the tale blends skill with myth. The line between fact and imagination feels beautifully thin. A small laugh breaks the hush. A boy whispers that he wants to be a scout who hears everything. His father chuckles and rubs his hair. You feel your heart warm at the sight. Winter nights have a way of softening everyone, bringing shared tenderness into focus. Then someone begins a humorous tale. It describes a bumbling hunter convinced he could court a spirit maiden who lived in a snowdrift. His attempts included singing off-key, falling into holes, and offering frozen berries as gifts. The lodge fills with laughter. Even the quietest elders smile. Humor is a lifeline during harsh winters, a reminder that joy is just as essential as food and fire. As laughter fades, the next storyteller leans forward and clasps their hands. Their voice deepens into a solemn cadence. They recount a memory half remembered, half inherited about ancestors traveling through a winter so severe birds froze mid-flight. People had to huddle together, pressing shoulder to shoulder through endless nights. The voice grows quieter as they say that the memory exists to remind everyone that endurance is not solitary, it is shared. You sit still, feeling the weight and beauty of that sentiment. The fire reflects in the eyes around you. Tiny sparks drift upward, disappearing into the smoke hole above. Someone else continues with a short tale about how constellations shift meaning in winter. Stars that signal storms, stars that promise fresh snow, stars that guide hunters home. You tilt your head back to imagine them above the lodge roof, shimmering in slow cosmic conversation. Time slips by. You are not sure how long you have been listening. The fire settles lower, but the warmth remains steady. People begin leaning against one another, eyelids drooping. Children curl onto laps or nestle into blankets. You feel your own muscles growing soft, your breath falling into an unhurried rhythm. A final storyteller speaks, an old man with a voice as gentle as falling snow. He tells a simple tale about a family who survived a long winter because they kept their stories alive, lighting their lodge with memory even when storms blotted out the stars. His words settle around you like soft feathers. The fire sighs. Someone adds a small log. Sparks glow, then soften into quiet embers. You rise slowly, stretching your legs. You step outside, welcomed by a night sky glittering untouched. The cold brushes your face, but your chest carries the lingering warmth of every story shared. In this vast winter, stories become a second fire, one that keeps the spirit awake and the cold at bay. You step back into the night, letting the crisp air clear the last traces of smoke from your lungs. The sky above is sharp and star-filled, a vast canvas sprinkled with cold fire. For a moment you simply stand still, watching your breath drift upward like a tiny offering. The lodge behind you fades into a muffled hum of laughter and settling voices, but further ahead, another circle of light flickers gently, its glow steadier, quieter, almost solemn. You walk toward it, feeling instinctively that this space is different. Here, winter brings not just survival tasks, but moments of deeper reflection. You enter a lodge where only a few people sit around a small, carefully tended fire. The smell of cedar drifts through the space, warm and earthy. Someone crushes a bundle of herbs between their palms, releasing a fragrant cloud that floats upward and dissolves near the smoke hole. A sense of calm rests over everything, deep enough that even the fire seems to crackle more softly. One respected detail from accounts of Plains rituals notes that winter was a favored season for certain ceremonies, because long nights created a natural environment for introspection. You feel that truth now, slipping into you like warm air settling around cold bones. A woman sits across from you, her eyes reflecting the firelight in calm amber tones. She invites you to sit. You do, lowering yourself onto a thick hide. She begins humming gently, a low, rhythmic sound that vibrates softly through the lodge. It is not a song exactly, but something older, something shaped by breath and memory. You feel your heartbeat aligning with the rhythm, steadying without effort. Someone adds dried sage to the fire. The smoke curls upward in thin spirals. It brushes your cheeks like a soft touch. A faint tingling runs along your arms. The air feels heavier, enriched by the scent. In some Plains communities, sage smoke in winter created a space for clarity and for inviting calm spirits into the circle. Whether you believe in spirits or simply the power of scent, the effect is undeniable. You breathe in, and your thoughts slow, soften, settle. One elder begins speaking in a voice so gentle it barely rises above the fire's murmur. She recounts how people once sought guidance during the cold season, asking questions of the land, the ancestors, or their own hearts. Winter offered the kind of silence needed for answers that summer never could give. Her fingers trace slow patterns on the hide beside her as she speaks. You follow every movement, feeling the story thread itself through the air. She pauses to sprinkle a pinch of powdered cedar into the flames. A burst of sweet scent rises. A quiet memory drifts through your mind. You once read that some families believed cedar smoke could carry prayers upward like invisible threads. The elder now lifts her hands toward the smoke, her palms open. You mimic her gesture instinctively, feeling the warmth kiss your skin. A young man near the wall shifts forward slightly. He explains that certain winter nights were believed to be more open for dreaming, when visions came clearer and were easier to interpret. He tells a story of a traveler who once dreamed of a distant herd. At the exact moment, hunters in another camp spotted those same animals. Whether coincidence or connection, the tale lingers in your thoughts. Modern researchers still discuss how dreams played roles in plains cultures, though interpretations vary. Listening now, you sense dreams here belong both to the mind and something larger. The fire pops, sending a shower of tiny sparks upward. You watch them float briefly before disappearing. One woman begins preparing a small bowl filled with herbs, rendered fat, and powdered roots. She stirs it with a smooth bone tool, explaining that this mixture is burned during personal prayers. The scent that rises from the bowl is rich, sweet, and grounding. She offers it to you to hold. The bowl is warm, its surface polished from countless hands. Its weight feels significant without being heavy. She begins chanting softly. Her voice moves in slow rises and falls, echoing like wind passing through tall grass. The chant tells of a journey through winter shadows, guided by a quiet voice that knows the way home. You do not understand every word, yet the emotion in them is unmistakable. Her voice fills the space, not loudly, but completely. A boy leans against his father's arm, listening with rapt attention. You notice how calm he looks, his eyes half closed. Winter rituals often taught children patience, presence, and the ability to sit inside silence without fear. You close your own eyes briefly, letting the chant drift through you. Your breath becomes steady, your shoulders loosen. The world narrows to warmth and voice and quiet light. When the chant ends, a man speaks up. He shares a reflection about how winter forces people inward, not just into lodges, but into their own minds. He explains that spiritual calm is easier to find when the outside world goes still. His words settle gently into your chest. You stare at the fire and imagine every flame as a tiny doorway, inviting you to step into your own thoughts. A curious little custom comes to mind. Some families believed that sitting in silence near the fire while it burned evenly could help resolve inner worries. The idea is simple. Match your breath to the flame's rhythm until your thoughts smooth out like snow after wind stops. You try it now, watching the flames sway slowly. In, out, in, out. The tension in your spine melts gradually. Another elder shares a memory from her youth. She describes traveling with her grandmother during winter nights to listen for the low hum of the plains. She explains that the land itself offers guidance if you let your senses open. The idea moves you more than you expect. Listening to the land as though it were an old teacher feels both poetic and profoundly practical. She adds that people once disagreed about what the hum meant. Some insisted it was the breath of the earth settling under snow. Others believed it was the voices of spirits moving between camps. A few said it signaled weather changes. Experts today still wrestle with interpreting these meanings. You smile softly, realizing that uncertainty often adds beauty to traditions rather than diminishing them. Another round of cedar is placed on the fire. The scent thickens, comforting and warm. People shift into more relaxed positions. A young woman ties a strip of cloth around her wrist, explaining that it reminds her of a winter prayer she made last season. The cloth holds meaning for her alone, yet she smiles shyly, inviting you to appreciate its importance. Someone begins a slow drumbeat on a small hand drum. The sound is soft, almost like a heartbeat. It reverberates through your chest in gentle pulses. The rhythm grows steadier, carrying a subtle calm. You close your eyes again. This time the lodge feels like floating inside a warm cocoon of sound. When the drumming stops, Silence settles like snow. You feel it, deep and peaceful. No need to fill it. No need to hurry. Winter calm here is deliberate, cherished, woven into every breath. You rise slowly, offering silent thanks to the people gathered. As you step outside, the cold brushes your face but no longer bites. The sky is a bowl of stars, each one bright and unblinking. You inhale deeply, feeling an unexpected lightness, as if some heavy part of you has thawed. You walk back toward your sleeping place, the snow beneath your feet glowing softly in the moonlight. Spiritual quiet lingers inside you like a warm ember that will carry you through the rest of the night. You wake to a morning so clear it almost feels polished. The storm has passed completely now, leaving the plains sparkling under a pale sun. The cold presses sharp against your cheeks as you step outside, but it is the kind of cold that feels clean rather than hostile. Smoke rises in thin blue ribbons from several lodges, drifting straight upward without a hint of wind. That stillness is rare in winter, and it signals an opening for something important: travel and exchange. People begin gathering near the center of camp, bundling goods in tightly wrapped hides. You join them, noticing bundles of dried meat, small carved tools, winter herbs, and neatly folded hides, stacked and ready. Trading never fully stops during the cold months. In fact, winter often brings some of the most strategic exchanges, when bands meet at designated spots to share resources, news, and goodwill. One frequently referenced account from frontier observers notes that winter trade routes often followed frozen rivers, turning them into natural highways that made travel easier. The idea drifts into your mind now, as you watch a group prepare to head toward one such icy corridor. A tall man invites you along, and soon you are walking across the frozen prairie with several others, sleds dragging lightly behind you. The sled runners whisper over the snow, creating a rhythmic hush that blends with the creaking of your moccasins. You glance at the horizon and see faint smoke trails rising from a distant grove. Another camp waits there. You feel a small lift in your chest, knowing you are approaching a moment where winter boundaries soften and communities intertwine. As you draw closer, figures emerge between the trees. They wave, calling out greetings carried on crisp air. The camps meet with warm smiles, hugs, and laughter. Children dart in and out, leaving trails of powder behind them. Adults clasp hands, gripping forearms in firm, affectionate greetings. The air fills with overlapping voices, the sound swelling like gentle winter thunder. For a moment, you simply absorb the warmth of the gathering. You help slide your camp's bundles into a cleared area where people have begun organizing goods on hides stretched flat over the snow. A woman from the visiting group unwraps a parcel to reveal intricately beaded strips, their colors vivid even against winter's muted palette. Another man places several carved bone knives on display, each handle polished as smooth as riverstone. You lean in to admire the craftsmanship and feel a quiet awe at the precision of each curve. Someone from your group offers dried bison meat. Another places a bundle of winter herbs beside it, explaining their uses for coughs and fatigue. A few people exchange decorated winter moccasins for flint arrowheads sourced from faraway quarries. You notice how trade here is not about prices. It is about balance, reciprocity, and recognizing the skill behind each item. A man steps forward with a large hide folded into a neat square. When he opens it, the inside reveals a pattern dyed with deep red pigment. You touch the hide and feel its softness. The dye forms flowing shapes, almost like swirling smoke. He explains that the design represents winter winds, guiding travelers safely. You offer your admiration, and he grins proudly. Moments like these remind you that art moves through winter just as surely as food and tools. You hear laughter behind you. Two elders from different camps are teasing each other about who brought the better goods this season. Their playful argument spins into stories about past winters when trades went wrong or hilariously right. One brags about obtaining a magnificent cooking pot, only to discover later it had a tiny hole that leaked steadily. The other counters with a memory of accidentally trading for a bundle of dried roots that turned out to be decorative instead of edible. Both men roar with laughter, the sound echoing through the grove. A woman invites you closer to a small fire where people sit warming their hands. She offers you a piece of roasted fish wrapped in a crisp strip of hide. The flavor of the fish, smoky and rich, surprises you with its warmth, despite the icy air. As you eat, she explains that winter meetings like this help renew bonds between families and strengthen alliances. She gestures toward a group of youths exchanging small gifts. These friendships may last a lifetime. Nearby, Several hunters lean over a map drawn directly into the snow with a charred stick. They discuss recent buffalo movements, sharing sightings and interpreting which direction herds might turn when the weather warms. You listen carefully. One hunter traces a looping path across the map and recounts a moment when his group saw a herd moving strangely early in the season. Another shakes his head, arguing that the animals were simply following a wind shift. Such discussions stretch on, rich with knowledge and conviction. Modern researchers still marvel at how precisely these communities tracked animal behavior during winter, though interpretations sometimes differ across regions. Then you notice a curious exchange happening at the edge of the gathering. A man presents a small pouch tied with a braided cord. Inside are brightly colored stones polished to a glossy sheen. The stones are tiny and smooth, each one shaped by water somewhere far from here. An elder from the visiting camp smiles and exchanges a beautifully carved whistle made from the wing bone of a bird. You lift the whistle gently when he offers to let you see it. Its surface carries delicate etchings that resemble swirling snow. You feel a quiet thrill. These are not survival goods. These are items of meaning, memory, beauty. A young girl tugs on your sleeve, motioning for you to follow her to a distant snowbank, where she and several others are sculpting shapes. With mittened hands, they build tiny figures in the snow, arranging them in a circle to mimic the gathering around the fire. You kneel beside them, helping shape a miniature lodge from packed snow. Their laughter rings through the clearing, bright as sunlight on ice. Back at the trading area, someone offers a woven winter bag made from plant fibers hard to find in this part of the plains. Its pattern is tight, durable, and beautiful. Your group responds by offering a finely tanned hide softened to remarkable smoothness. They compare textures, stretch the materials, and nod in mutual satisfaction. No hurry, no tension. Winter trade is an exchange of trust as much as goods. A brief pause settles over the scene as several people gather to share news from their travels. One woman tells of a late-season storm far to the north that disrupted buffalo paths. A man responds with news of a spring expected to rise early this year. Another shares a tale of wolves traveling closer to human camps than usual. The discussion flows freely. Winter stories carry both warning and opportunity. Someone produces a drum, its hide surface stretched taut. A slow beat begins, and people gather naturally, moving closer in small steps. The rhythm grows warmer, fuller. Two youths start a gentle dance, their steps sliding lightly across the snow. Everyone watches with soft smiles. Winter has its own forms of celebration, quieter but deeply felt. Before leaving, you witness a final gesture. A trader from the visiting camp places one small bundle in the hands of someone from yours, whispering something too soft to catch. You learn later it was a token of goodwill, meant to be passed forward in the next winter meeting, a quiet thread of continuity woven through time. As the groups part ways, sleds are loaded again, handshakes exchanged, and final waves given. You walk back toward your own camp, carrying a small carved bone tool gifted to you during the gathering. It feels warm in your pocket, like a piece of winter wisdom you did not know you needed. Snow crunches under your feet. The sky glows pale as the afternoon fades. Winter may be harsh, but today it revealed another side of itself. Community, connection, exchange, and the simple joy of meeting familiar faces across the snow. The sun hangs low, painting the snow in pale gold, and the camp hums with the kind of quiet energy that signals a shift in purpose. After the warmth of trade and shared laughter, people now turn inward again to tend the tools that make survival possible. Winter is not only a season of endurance, it is also a season of preparation, a time to repair what has been worn down by months of hard use. You walk toward a cluster of hides laid out in the open air, where men and women sit with tools spread neatly around them. Their breath rises in small puffs as they work, each exhale steady, each movement deliberate. You settle beside a long wooden bow, stretched across a pair of supports. A man sits polishing its surface, with a stone dipped lightly in rendered fat. He slides the stone back and forth until the wood glows with a soft sheen. He explains that winter dryness can crack even the strongest bows, so every few days he checks for rough patches or weakening grain. His voice is calm, measured. One well-established detail from historical accounts notes that many communities treated bowwood during winter because cold air made imperfections easier to detect. You run your fingers along the bow and feel tiny ridges beneath the polish, proof of careful attention. Nearby, someone scrapes a bison hide with long practiced strokes. The hide rests on a wooden frame designed to keep it taut. Each scrape releases faint, crisp sounds that blend with the soft winter breeze. A young helper collects the shaved fibers, forming a growing pile beside her. She tells you these fibers will be used to reinforce the inside of shield covers or to line tool grips for better insulation. You lift a handful of the shavings. They feel light as air, yet sturdy, like the beginnings of something useful. Another person prepares arrow shafts, rotating each one slowly between his palms. He checks for straightness, alignment, and tiny imperfections. Then he heats them gently over the fire, bending them with careful pressure to reset their shape. The heat loosens the wood just enough to make it pliable without weakening it. You watch closely as he attaches stone points sharpened to deadly perfection. He binds them with sinew dipped in warm hide glue. The bond forms quickly in the dry cold, hardening into a tight, secure hold. A woman beside him inspects a quiver made from thick hide. She reinforces the seams with new stitches, replacing older ones that have become brittle. When she finishes, she holds the quiver up to the sunlight. It looks almost new again. She smiles shyly when you compliment her work, explaining that winter is the ideal time to make sure everything is ready for the speed and demands of spring hunts. A few yards away, two elders sit repairing a large buffalo robe. They quietly discuss memories from younger years as they sew, reminiscing about hunts long past and storms survived. Their conversation drifts around you like gentle wind. You hear them debate the best method of softening hides in frigid weather. One elder insists that working a hide with warmed stones creates a better finish. The other counters that gradual softening near a steady fire produces fewer cracks. Their disagreement is light-hearted but sincere. Modern researchers also note that different regions use different hide treating strategies, with no single method recognized as perfect for all situations. Beside the elders, a young craftsperson adjusts the bindings on a snow sled. She inspects rawhide lashings that have tightened in the cold. Rawhide shrinks when frozen, and if the bindings contract too much, the sled can warp. She splashes warm water over the lashings, allowing them to loosen just enough to adjust their tension. You help her flip the sled onto its side. Together you check the runners, smoothing rough spots with a flat stone. When she is satisfied, she taps the wood gently and grins. The sled is ready for another long haul. Further down the line, someone sharpens a bone knife. The scraping sound is steady and rhythmic as they run the blade along a stone. They test the edge against a piece of hide, smiling with approval when it slices cleanly. Tools like these must be maintained constantly in winter. A dull knife can slow food preparation, make repairs harder, and even create dangerous situations. You feel the weight of that responsibility as you watch the blade glint in the pale light. Nearby, a pair of children gather small bits of wood. They place them into a basket, while an older woman checks the condition of tool handles. She replaces one cracked handle with a new piece of carefully carved ash wood. She explains to the children how each tool has a spirit of its own, deserving of care and respect. The children nod solemnly, absorbing the lesson with wide eyes. You move toward another group working on fishing gear. A man tightens sinew cords along a willow frame used for winter nets. The fibers vibrate softly as he pulls them taut. Beside him, someone inspects a long spear, ensuring the point is still sharp enough to penetrate ice or water. The spear's shaft gleams in the fading light. The man notices your interest and hands it to you. It feels perfectly balanced, surprisingly light despite its length. A woman calls your attention to a bundle of repaired rope. She stretches it between her hands, testing its resilience. The rope is braided from plant fibers gathered in warmer seasons. Winter dryness can weaken the strands, so she rubs them with a mixture of fat and ground herbs to keep them supple. She offers you a piece to touch. The rope feels warm, alive, renewed. Another group sits by the fire crafting new clothing fasteners from antelope bone. These small toggles, smooth and polished, keep coats closed against wind. You watch as they carve tiny grooves for sinew thread. The precision impresses you. Even something as small as a fastener matters when temperatures fall so low. One man works on a winter drum. He stretches a hide across the frame, pulling it tight before securing it in place. He says winter air gives the drum a deeper voice. He taps it gently with his fingertips, producing a low thrum that vibrates through the cold air like a distant heartbeat. You feel its resonance in your chest. Another person checks the condition of cooking tools. A stone pot shows tiny cracks from repeated heating and cooling. They gently warm it near the fire to expand the stone, then rub oils into the surface to fill the cracks. Watching the pot heal feels almost magical. As afternoon light stretches long shadows across the plains, everyone steps back to admire the collection of refreshed tools. Bows shine with fresh polish. Arrows lie neatly bundled. Hides look soft and strong. Knives glint with sharp promise. Sleds rest ready for travel. Ropes, nets, spears, pots, and clothing fasteners stand renewed. A sense of readiness hums quietly through the camp. Winter is harsh, but it is also a season of renewal through effort. Tools shaped by many hands become extensions of the community's resilience. You breathe deeply, the cold filling your lungs with crisp clarity. Repairing tools is not just maintenance, it is a quiet promise that spring will come, and when it does, the people will be prepared. You step away from the work circle as the sun dips toward the horizon, grateful for the chance to witness winter craftsmanship at its most intimate and essential. You wake to the low rumble of something heavy shifting outside the lodge. It is not the wind this time, nor the creak of snow settling under its own weight. When you lift the flap and step out into the crisp morning air, you see the source immediately. Several horses stand gathered near the corral, their breath rising in thick white clouds that drift slowly in the calm dawn. Their coats glisten with frost, and tiny icicles cling to the ends of their manes. You feel the cold nip at your skin, but the horses feel it even more deeply. Winter care for them is as vital as caring for any person in camp, and today you will learn how that care unfolds. A group of men and women moves quietly among the animals, checking hooves, brushing out frozen patches of fur, and offering handfuls of winter forage stored from warmer seasons. You walk closer, careful not to startle them. One mare flares her nostrils and snorts softly when you approach. Her warm breath hits your face like a small gust of steam. You reach out your hand slowly, letting her sniff your fingers before you touch her neck. Her coat feels cold but thick, dense enough to shield her from wind, yet still needing human support. One well-documented insight from plains observers explains that horses were often given the most sheltered spots in camp during winter, not because they were fragile, but because they were invaluable. They carried hunters, transported goods, and served as companions. The people relied on them, and so their needs were woven into the rhythm of every winter day. You glance around and see that the horse shelter sits near a stand of trees, the trunks acting as natural windbreaks. Thick layers of hay line the ground, creating insulation against frozen earth. A woman gestures for you to join her near a young stallion. She holds a brush made from bundled plant fibers and begins working through the horse's coat with steady strokes. She explains that brushing removes frost, stimulates circulation, and keeps the animal's muscles warm. You take another brush and mimic her technique. Frost melts under your hand. The stallion tilts his head slightly, leaning into the warmth. Nearby, a man checks the hooves of another horse. He uses a small bone tool to remove packed snow and tiny ice clumps wedged under the hoof. You kneel beside him and watch as he works. The hooves look wider than usual, as horses raised on the plains often grew strong, thick hooves capable of handling frozen ground. The man taps the hoof lightly, listening for hollow tones that might indicate a crack. When the sound comes back solid, he nods with approval. A young boy arrives with a pouch of dried berries mixed with ground roots. He pours a small handful into a wooden bowl and offers it to one of the older mares. She eats slowly, the crunch of the mixture echoing in the still morning. A curious little winter practice resurfaces in your memory. Some families added small amounts of mineral-rich ash to horse feed during the coldest months to help with digestion and energy. You notice a faint dusting of grey mixed into the feed and smile. The knowledge lives on here. A pair of teens carries buckets of warmed water from the lodge fires. The steam rises in curls as they pour the water into shallow troughs. In deep winter, cold water can shock a horse's system, so it must be warmed first. You help steady one of the troughs. The heat radiates softly against your gloves, and you watch as horses approach carefully, dipping their muzzles and drinking with slow, grateful rhythm. Movement at the far edge of the corral catches your eye. Two experienced handlers are fitting a horse with a winter hide blanket. You walk over to observe. The blanket, made from thick buffalo hide, is lined with soft deer fur. They drape it over the horse's back, securing it with straps made of braided sinew. The horse trots a few steps, getting used to the weight, then settles comfortably. The hide blends with its natural coat so well that from a distance, you might miss the extra layer entirely. One of the handlers tells you that not all horses need blankets. Some grow such dense winter coats that extra layers are unnecessary. But older horses, or those recovering from illness, appreciate the warmth. He gestures to another horse with fur thick as plush wool. You reach out and sink your fingers into it. The coat feels deep, warm, and insulating. The horse flicks its ear as if proud of the attention. A group of elders approaches next. They carry small pouches of herbs used for treating respiratory issues in livestock. You watch as one elder gently spreads a mixture along the nostrils of a horse that has been coughing lightly. The scent is sharp, resinous, almost peppery. He explains that it helps open breathing passages and soothe irritation caused by icy winds. You lean close and inhale the aroma. It clears your own nose immediately. A lively discussion sparks among the caretakers as they check each animal. Some recall winters when horses huddled tightly together, creating shared warmth like a moving wall of fur and breath. Others talk about how snowdrift sometimes protected horses better than open ground. One remembers a winter so harsh that horses instinctively dug shallow pits in the snow to shield their bodies from biting winds. Modern researchers still explore these instinctive behaviors, analyzing how horses adapt to cold through both learned and inherited patterns. You help carry hay from a storage cache. The grass is dry, crisp, and sweet-smelling. When you place a bundle near the horses, they gather quickly, munching contentedly. Snowflakes drift from the sky as you work, settling on their coats before melting into tiny droplets. One horse nuzzles your shoulder, searching your pocket for treats. You laugh softly and scratch its neck. Its warmth spreads through your gloves. A man signals for quiet. He kneels beside a newborn foal nestled in a small shelter created from a half-circle of hides. The foal, still wobbly and delicate, sniffs the cold air cautiously. Its mother stands protectively near it, ears swiveling. You feel your chest tighten at the sight. Winter births are rare but not impossible. The handlers move with tenderness, checking the foal's legs, wiping frost from its nose, and ensuring it can stand. You watch as it takes a shaky step, then leans into its mother's side. Someone murmurs a protective blessing, a simple phrase meant to encourage strength through the cold months. You feel the sincerity of it settle in the air like soft snow. As the morning stretches into midday, the horses become livelier. Some trot playfully around the corral, kicking up powder. Others roll onto their backs, legs flailing in the air as they scratch themselves in the snow, sending sprays of white in every direction. The sight draws laughter from the caretakers. Even in winter, the horses find moments of joy. You walk back toward the lodge, feeling a strange combination of exhaustion and contentment. Caring for horses in winter is demanding work, but deeply satisfying. They are not just animals here. They are companions, helpers, guardians of mobility. Their well-being becomes a mirror for the spirit of the camp. Your fingertips tingle with lingering cold as you rub them together. Behind you, the horses continue breathing warm clouds into the frosty air. The bond between people and horses breathes with equal warmth, steady and enduring. You step out after tending the horses, and for a moment, the world seems almost gentle. The sky glows pale blue, and a thin breeze glides across the plains without its usual winter bite. But as you walk, your boots sink deeper into the snow than expected. The softness surprises you. The storm from days earlier has left drifts piled in unpredictable shapes, some hard as stone and others loose as flour. You crouch to scoop a handful. It slips easily through your fingers. Today you will learn how snow itself becomes both ally and adversary, depending on how you read it. A group of hunters waves you over. They stand near a series of mounds and ridges, pointing to various textures of snow. One explains that this powdery layer on top hides a crust right beneath it. He taps the surface with the end of his staff. The crust cracks lightly. He nods. Crust like this can either help you glide across long distances or betray you when you place too much weight on it. You press your palm gently onto the snow and feel the thin ice layer flex under your touch. One well-known piece of winter knowledge shared by many plains families is that snow shelters can save a life when temperatures plummet. You follow the group as they approach a drift near a line of low bushes. A man kneels and uses his hands to carve a hollow into the drift, scooping out the inside until the space forms a small chamber. He explains that snow, though cold, traps heat incredibly well when shaped correctly. You duck inside the hollow, feeling how the wind disappears immediately. The interior is cool but strangely calm. It smells faintly of wet earth and ice. The man's voice echoes softly inside the tiny dome. "This is not a long-term shelter," he says, "but it can protect someone caught in sudden whiteout conditions." You crawl out and watch as a woman reinforces the entrance with a small slab of packed snow. She pats it, until it forms a firm arch. She tells you that people sometimes built temporary windbreaks out of snow near hunting grounds. With enough layers, the walls grew strong enough to withstand sharp gusts. You run your hand along the outer surface. It feels smooth and solid, almost like stone polished by winter. A child nearby tosses a handful of loose snow into the air, watching it scatter like dust. He laughs, then dips a stick into a small bowl of crushed berries mixed with melted snow. When he lifts the stick, he holds it up like a marker. The woman beside him explains that in winter, people sometimes used snow mixed with pigments to create temporary signals on open ground, guiding travelers through disorienting landscapes. You watch as the child draws lines and shapes on the white surface. They stand out brilliantly, visible from far away. Another man calls your attention to a peculiar patch of snow shaped into a narrow ridge. He crouches and points at faint indentations. "These are the tracks of a fox," he explains, "but they lightly glazed over after yesterday's wind." "Snow has its own memory," he adds, storing impressions that shift but never fully disappear. You trace the shallow marks with your fingers. They feel delicate, like the ghost of movement frozen in time. A gentle debate begins among several adults about the best way to use snow for camouflage. One insists that hunters often dusted their clothing with fine snow to blend into white landscapes. Another claims that crouching behind packed drifts worked better. Both speak with conviction. Modern observers still discuss how cleverly plains hunters use snow to stay hidden during winter hunts. Listening now, you realize both techniques likely held truth depending on the day, the terrain, and the prey. A woman leads you further out, toward a wide open field where the snow ripples in subtle patterns. She explains that after a storm, the wind carves shapes in the snow like writing. She kneels and draws your attention to long parallel lines etched across the surface. These lines point in the direction the wind traveled, helping scouts determine weather changes or the approach of new storms. You stand quietly, letting your eyes follow the ridges as they stretch far across the plains like silent guides. She then shows you a mound with an odd rounded form. Beneath it, she says, is a burrow, likely a small animal's winter shelter. Snow naturally insulates their nests, creating warm pockets beneath the icy crust. You kneel and place your hand lightly on the mound. The snow feels warmer here. The idea of hidden warmth beneath layers of cold fills you with a quiet sense of wonder. Someone whistles sharply from behind you. A group of hunters motions for you to join them. They approach a narrow ravine where snow has drifted into deep pockets. Using long poles, they test the ground for hidden hollows that could collapse under weight. You hold one of the poles and push it into the drift. It sinks with no resistance. A thin cave lies below, carved over time by wind, water, or animals. One wrong step, and you could plunge waist deep. The knowledge humbles you. Snow is beautiful, but it does not forgive careless movement. As you walk back toward camp, a man demonstrates how snow can be used to muffle sound. He steps into a drift and places his foot down with exaggerated slowness. The sound is barely audible. On the plains, quiet movement in winter could mean the difference between success and failure in a hunt. You try it yourself, stepping softly, sinking slowly. The crunch is subdued, almost gentle. You move again, feeling the thrill of moving like a shadow through the snow. Near camp, children play another instructive game. They shape snow into balls, then toss them at marks drawn onto tree trunks. The game is fun, but also a way to practice precision, strength, and timing when wearing thick winter gloves. One child misses wildly and bursts into laughing protest. Another lands a perfect hit. Their skills sharpen without them even realizing it. The sun sits lower now, turning the snow into a field of glittering crystals. You crouch to pick up a handful, letting it sparkle in your palm. Snow is cold, yes, but also warm in its own strange way. It protects, hides, reveals, guides, softens, and sometimes saves. You marvel at how something so simple becomes a versatile tool in the right hands. As you head toward the nearest fire, the world feels different, larger, more alive beneath its frozen skin. Snow is no longer just snow. It is a companion, a teacher, a warning, and a blessing all at once. You brush the last of it from your sleeves and step inside the warmth of the lodge, carrying a deeper respect for every drifting white grain that blankets the plains. The next morning opens with a hush that feels almost thoughtful, as if the plains themselves are pausing before revealing their next secret. You step outside and sense immediately that today belongs to the watchers. The readers of distance, the people who understand how much of winter safety depends on knowing what moves beyond the camp's edge. Scouts drift through the snow with purpose, checking the horizon for subtle signs the untrained eye would miss. You follow them quietly, your breath rising in soft clouds that vanish into the open air. One man kneels beside a line of wind-carved snow and studies the way the crest tilts. He explains that the angle reveals how the night wind shifted direction while people slept. In a landscape without towering trees or mountains, wind marks become a language. A well-known observation from early travelers noted that plains scouts often treated the entire horizon as a shifting story written by weather, animals, and even distant human movement. You begin to understand that now as you scan the open world around you. The scout raises a hand, motioning for silence. He points toward a faint smudge on the far ridge. At first it looks like nothing more than a drop of shadow. Then you notice how it trembles slightly, rising and falling in a pattern too regular for drifting snow. He tells you it is smoke, thin, controlled, and coming from very far away. Smoke like that suggests another camp, perhaps hunting, perhaps traveling, perhaps passing through. You feel a small ripple of curiosity tighten in your chest. Another scout crouches to examine tiny tracks near a clump of grass. You kneel beside him and see barely visible dots pressed into the snow. He tells you they belong to a small bird that only travels in certain directions during harsher cold. By following its path, he can estimate the temperature shift across the plains between night and morning. You marvel at the precision of this knowledge. Small creatures become living compasses in a landscape built from wind and white. A little farther on, a woman drops to one knee and brushes her mitten across the ground. She reveals a faint indentation, long and slender. She taps it gently, then nods. A deer passed here during the night. She points out tiny clumps of frost stuck to the print's edges, explaining that the frost forms only if the animal's body heat melts the snow slightly before the wind cools it again. The presence of the frost indicates the deer moved through not long ago. The detail feels so delicate, so transient, that you wonder how many thousands of small signs scouts learn to notice through their lives. You approach a rocky rise that gives a wide view of the plains. 3 scouts stand at its peak, their silhouettes dark against the snowy world. You climb up to join them. The air sharpens at this height, and the wind brushes your ears with icy fingertips. One man lifts a long wooden staff and traces a slow arc across the horizon. He points out areas where old buffalo tracks have been partially erased, snowdrifts with smooth surfaces that hint at sheltered valleys, and distant brush disturbed by something moving in the early morning. To your eyes, it all looks almost identical, but to him, the plains speak clearly. A quiet conversation begins among the scouts. One insists that the smoke in the distance is from travelers migrating south. Another believes it is from a winter hunting party. Yet another shakes his head and says the shape of the smoke drift suggests a smaller fire, perhaps a lone family stopping for rest. Their interpretations differ, each supported by quiet confidence. Modern researchers still examine how scouts read subtle horizon cues, and listening to these voices now, you realize each reader interprets the winter canvas with their own learned instinct. You follow them down the slope toward a frozen creek. The wind rushes softly along the ice, carrying thin flakes of snow that spin like tiny silver leaves. The scouts stop near a cluster of willows and crouch low. One brushes aside the powder with the edge of his hand, revealing a print much deeper than the small bird tracks you saw earlier. A wolf passed here. The print is almost elegant in its shape, the toes splayed slightly. A woman touches its edge and notes how the surrounding snow crystals are disturbed only on one side. She determines which direction the wolf traveled with just a glance. You look again, struggling to see the details she sees so effortlessly. As you continue walking, you notice that the scouts never move in straight lines. They weave slightly, adjusting to terrain, snow texture, and shadows. Their motion feels like reading rather than walking. Every shift of wind or glint of sun becomes part of a larger pattern. One scout crouches abruptly and signals to you. He traces a line in the snow with the tip of his mitten, then points toward a break in the horizon. Thin columns of snow rise gently from the ground, swirling almost like dust devils. He explains that this usually happens when bison have recently moved through an area, stirring loose powder that lingers in the air longer than in untouched terrain. Your eyes widen. You would never have connected those drifting snow columns to the path of a herd. A light-hearted moment follows when one of the younger scouts insists that distant ravens circling in a certain pattern indicate the presence of meat left over from a predator's kill. Another laughs and teases him, recalling a time he mistook swirling ravens for hunters cooking stew. The group chuckles warmly. Even among skilled watchers, Winter can play tricks. They lead you to a flat area where the snow appears slightly smoother than the land around it. One scout kneels and digs a shallow trench. Beneath the powder lies a series of frozen hoofprints. Buffalo. He runs his palm over them thoughtfully. The number of tracks, the depth, and the spacing tell him how fast the herd moved and how long ago. You lean down, letting the cold seep into your knees as you study the prints. They look like nothing more than simple impressions, but the scout's explanation makes them feel like ancient script written across the ground. As midday approaches, the sun grows brighter, reflecting off the snow so intensely you narrow your eyes. The scouts begin their return toward camp. You walk beside them, trying to absorb every nuance. The land is always shifting, always speaking, always writing new stories across its surface, and scouts are the ones who learn to listen. On the way back, one elder scout walks quietly beside you. He tells you that winter scouting is not just about noticing signs, but about noticing the spaces between signs. Silence means as much as motion. Stillness carries information. Even the emptiness of the horizon has something to say if you learn the right questions to ask. His words settle in your thoughts like soft snow. Before you re-enter camp, the scouts pause to survey the area one last time. They listen, they watch, they breathe in the winter air. Only when they are satisfied that everything remains safe do they step forward. You feel a newfound respect for the invisible shield they create around the community. Their knowledge stretches far beyond footprints and smoke. It is a living map written by wind, animal, sky, and snow. You follow them back to the fire, grateful for the guardians of the winter horizon. The morning after the scouts' return feels heavier than usual, as if the air itself carries a hush of caution. You leave your lodge quietly, noticing how people speak in lower tones, how movements are slower, more deliberate. Winter on the plains is not only a battle against cold and hunger, it can also be a season when tensions simmer beneath the surface, shaped by scarcity, shifting territories, and old rivalries that winter pressure can stir awake. Today you will witness how people navigate these fragile moments with a mix of wisdom, patience, and quiet strength. You walk toward the central fire where several elders stand in a small circle, discussing something with calm seriousness. Their eyes occasionally drift toward the western horizon, where yesterday the scouts saw distant smoke. A man kneels, drawing lines in the snow with a stick. He marks ridges, valleys, and likely travel routes. People gather around him, watching. One long-held historical insight mentions that winter often forced groups into closer proximity, increasing the risk of misunderstandings or sudden encounters. You feel that truth settling over the camp as the elders speak. A woman approaches you with a faint smile, though her eyes stay sharp. She explains that not all winter visitors bring trouble. Many bring friendship or trade, but uncertainty breathes differently in winter. You nod, understanding the delicate balance. Even a distant plume of smoke can carry 10 possible meanings. A group of men and women prepare to walk a short distance beyond camp to check the terrain. They are not going to confront anyone, simply to watch. You join them, stepping carefully through the light crust of snow. The cold air prickles your skin. No one speaks for a long while. This quiet, steady watchfulness reveals as much about winter diplomacy as any meeting or council. When you reach a low rise, one scout kneels and signals for the group to stop. He points to faint impressions in the snow, long parallel lines dragged through powder. Sleigh runners. A small group passed here recently. You crouch beside him, tracing the shallow grooves with your fingertips. One of the older hunters notes that the weight was light, likely a family, not a war party, but caution remains. You can hear it in the way he exhales slowly. A lively but subdued discussion rises among the watchers. One says the tracks angle toward higher ground, where trees thin out. Another believes they turn north. A third insists the snow on top of the prints means they passed many hours ago. Their voices overlap gently. Modern historians still discuss how these winter reading skills shaped relationships along the plains, whether groups leaned more on careful distance or deliberate approach. Listening now, you sense both were valuable, depending on the moment. As you return to camp, 2 elders stand waiting. They ask for news. The watchers explain what they saw. The elders nod slowly, then decide on the next steps. The camp will remain alert but not fearful. People will continue daily tasks, but scouts will widen their observation ring. You sense relief in the air, measured response, not panic. Later, you are invited to sit at a winter council meeting held inside a large lodge. The fire in the center glows low, casting long shadows upward. People sit in a circle, wrapped in warm hides. Their faces flicker between light and dark as flames shift. One elder speaks first, describing the need for patience during winter travel. He reminds everyone that food scarcity makes some groups wander farther than usual, and that helping, rather than assuming hostility, builds lasting peace. Another elder counters gently, saying caution must still guide decisions. Stories from the past mention travelers who approached under peaceful signs, but carried hidden desperation or fear. She insists the camp must remain aware, not naive. The conversation moves like a winter breeze, guided by respect rather than argument. You feel how deeply diplomacy is woven into their survival. A man tells a remembered tale about two bands who once met unexpectedly during a harsh winter. Their first reaction was suspicion, but the elders of both groups insisted on exchanging small gifts before speaking of anything else. That act softened the air, allowing both sides to breathe. You can almost see the scene as he describes it. Snow falling softly, steam rising from breath, hands extended cautiously with small tokens that said, "We come in peace," before any words were spoken. A woman adds another layer to the conversation. She says that winter changes people. Long nights draw out old worries. Hunger sharpens tempers. Isolation, clouds, judgment. She reminds everyone that showing understanding can diffuse tensions faster than showing strength. Yet she also points out that calm is not weakness. Calm is control. Calm is clarity. A small fire crackles behind you, sending waves of heat across the lodge. You watch as people nod, absorbing every voice. This is winter diplomacy. Deliberate, patient, rooted in listening. You feel almost relieved that no rash decisions have been made. One curious anecdote someone shares makes several people smile. He describes a time when two camps misinterpreted each other's fire signals during winter. One believed the other was warning of danger, while the other thought they were being invited for celebration. By the time they realized the mix-up, they had already approached each other in full defensive posture. The tension melted when a child slipped on the ice, and both sides rushed to help. That moment broke the illusion of danger. It became a story retold for years, a reminder that misunderstandings can grow quickly in winter's silence. The council's tone shifts again as someone mentions how researchers today still analyze signaling practices among wintering groups. Smoke patterns, camp placement, snow markings, the direction of sled tracks, all contain meaning, but meanings can change with context. You feel the weight of those interpretations now, hearing how people remain careful not to assume too much from too little. The meeting winds down. People rise slowly, stretching cold, stiff legs. Some share quiet jokes, others clasp hands. The air feels calmer. The decision stands. No conflict, no alarm, but steady watchfulness. You step outside again. The night sky glows faintly, brushed with violet. Snow crunches beneath your boots as you walk toward the horses to check on them again. The cold air settles gently across your face. Somewhere in the distance, a single wolf howls. Instead of fear, you feel the howl as a reminder of the wide world beyond camp and the importance of balance within it. Conflict and peace live side by side in winter, each shaped by caution, conversation, and the willingness to read signs with both alertness and humility. You exhale slowly, grateful to witness how this community chooses patience over fear. The morning rises slowly, as if even the sun knows winter asks everyone to conserve energy. You step outside and feel a gentler cold than yesterday, a soft version of winter that settles into your clothes rather than biting straight through them. A faint hum of activity draws your attention toward a wide shelter near the edge of camp. Women move there with confident focus, carrying baskets, tools, bundles of fiber, and tightly wrapped hides. You follow them quietly, realizing today you will witness a side of winter life that often goes unseen, but shapes the entire rhythm of the season. Inside the shelter, warmth gathers in pockets around small fires. The air holds scents of smoke, dried roots, and freshly scraped hides. Women sit in clusters, their hands busy in different but connected tasks. Some prepare food, others mend clothing, still others craft tools or teach young girls the skills they will need in their own winters ahead. Their conversations weave through the space like soft threads. You find a place near them and settle onto a thick mat, grateful for the heat radiating upward. A woman sitting closest to you begins grinding corn in a small stone bowl. The sound is rhythmic, comforting. She works with practiced ease, and as she moves, she explains that winter meals depend on careful planning done months earlier. One firmly documented detail from accounts of Plains families notes that women oversaw much of the food preservation, ensuring that dried berries, ground corn, and cured meats lasted through the harshest stretches of winter. You watch as she mixes the ground corn with bits of dried squash. The colors blend warmly in the dim light. Beside her, another woman prepares long strands of sinew. She twists them gently between her palms, checking their strength. The sinew will become thread for repairing worn coats, boots, and gloves. She hands you a strand to feel. It is smooth and tough, capable of holding hide seams through biting wind and snow. She smiles when you admire her skill, explaining that winter sewing is not just a chore but a kind of quiet mastery that shapes survival with every stitch. A small group of girls sits near the fire, practicing stitches on scrap pieces of hide. Their teacher leans over them, guiding their hands with calm patience. One girl fumbles, tangling her thread, and bursts into laughter. The others giggle with her, and soon the whole group is smiling. The teacher tells them that mistakes are part of the learning, and that even the most skilled women in camp once tangled their thread countless times. Her voice is gentle but confident. You feel the warmth of that reassurance settle into the room. Another cluster of women prepares a bundle of herbs and dried plants. They arrange them carefully in woven bags, organizing them by use. You learn that these winter herbs support digestion, ease headaches, warm the chest, and help with deep seasonal fatigue. A woman offers you a small pinch of dried mint, which releases a sharp, refreshing scent as you crush it between your fingers. Beside her, a young apprentice arranges sweet-smelling sage leaves in neat rows. A lovely, lesser-known bit of tradition surfaces in your memory. Some families braided herbs into small winter charms that hung near cooking areas, believed to encourage health and unity during the coldest months. As if confirming this memory, one woman holds up a freshly braided charm and grins proudly before placing it above the fire pit. You hear laughter from the far side of the shelter. A group of women there is working on scraping and softening hides. The scraping stones glide across the surface with steady rasps. One woman scrapes, another stretches the hide with her weight, and a third checks for imperfections. They move together like a small team, each step seamless. When they pause for a moment, one woman shares a short story about a winter long ago when she and her sister scraped so many hides their hands felt frozen in the position for a full day afterward. The room erupts in laughter again, and you feel the warmth of their humor glow almost as brightly as the fire. Nearby, a woman kneels beside a basket filled with dried choke cherries. She crushes them with a smooth stone, mixing them with a thick paste of tallow. When she finishes, she rolls the mixture into small cakes. Winter energy snacks, she calls them with a wink. You taste a tiny pinch when she offers. The flavor is tangy and rich, filling your mouth with a burst of unexpected warmth. She explains that these cakes help keep people strong during long, cold days. In one corner, an elder sits with several children leaning close to her. She tells them a story as she sorts through a bowl of beads made from bone and shell. Her voice is soft, carrying the kind of strength born from dozens of winters. She explains how each bead carries memory and meaning. As she speaks, she threads beads into a simple design. You watch her fingers move with graceful precision, shaping a winter ornament that will hang from a coat or pouch. She pauses at one point to remember how winter craftwork once kept her whole family entertained during storms so fierce they could barely step outside for days. A tiny smile touches her lips as she describes everyone huddling together, taking turns telling jokes or stories as they worked. Even now, you can almost hear the echoes of that warmth. A short way off, a woman tends to a small cradle board. She smooths the lining, checking for worn spots. A baby sleeps inside, wrapped in soft fur. She hums a lullaby that blends effortlessly with the crackling fire. The tune floats through the air, creating a soothing rhythm that calms even your breathing. Winter parenting demands extra vigilance, she explains, but it also invites deeper closeness. You watch her gently adjust the baby's blanket, a gesture filled with quiet devotion. Someone else calls your attention to a half-completed woven mat. The pattern is intricate, made from strips of dried grass collected long before the first frost. The maker explains how such mats add insulation to the lodge floor and keep feet warm during long nights. She invites you to try weaving. Your fingers feel clumsy at first, but she encourages you, guiding each movement until the pattern begins to form. Her patience makes the task feel soothing rather than awkward. A conversation nearby turns toward winter roles. One woman mentions how early anthropologists misunderstood the workload, assuming that winter slowed life down for women. She shakes her head and laughs softly. Winter is just as busy, she says, but in a different way. Instead of traveling and gathering, women focus on preserving warmth, maintaining tools, repairing clothes, preparing food, teaching children, and keeping spirits steady. She gestures around the shelter. This is the real work of winter, she adds. Everything that keeps life running quietly, steadily, without interruption. Another elder joins the conversation, explaining that scholars still debate the extent to which winter tasks were divided by age or experience. Some believe older women guided most of the craft work, while others argue younger women took on more responsibility when storms were fierce. The elder shrugs lightly. It changed from year to year, she says. Winter teaches flexibility. As the day moves toward afternoon, the shelter fills with a warm symphony of activity. Scraping, grinding, weaving, stitching, stirring, humming. You feel wrapped in a sense of continuity, as if every movement echoes centuries of winter wisdom passed from one generation to the next. Before you leave, a woman hands you a small pouch she just finished sewing. It is simple but beautifully made, decorated with a single stitched pattern. She tells you it represents community, the way all tasks interlock. You thank her, feeling its softness warm your palms. Stepping outside again, the cold brushes your cheeks, but now it feels gentler. Behind you, the women continue working, teaching, laughing, creating. Their winter brilliance is not loud or dramatic. It is steady, essential, and woven into every quiet heartbeat of the camp. A soft glow creeps across the morning snow, and with it comes a hum of anticipation unlike the usual rhythm of winter chores. You step outside and sense immediately that today carries a different kind of energy. People move with lightness in their steps, fires burn a little brighter, voices float through the cold air with a warmth that feels almost festive. Even the horses seem livelier, tossing their heads as if they know a celebration is brewing. Today, you will witness something rare and deeply cherished, a midwinter feast, a moment when the long stretch of cold pauses to make room for joy. You follow the scent of roasting meat drifting from a series of open fires. Women gather around large clay pots, stirring mixtures thick with dried berries, ground corn, and savory broth. Children dart between the lodges carrying small bundles of wood, their cheeks flushed with excitement. A man waves you over to help arrange long wooden poles for hanging strips of fresh meat above a glowing bed of coals. The fat sizzles as it drips, creating a warm aroma that wraps the entire camp in a blanket of promise. One widely noted detail from accounts of plains gatherings mentions that midwinter feasts were often timed not by the calendar, but by feeling, by a moment when the community sensed the need for uplift. You can feel that impulse now. After weeks of cold and storms, this feast is a reminder that hardship does not swallow the whole season. There is room for laughter, for gratitude, for shared warmth. A young woman approaches carrying a large bowl filled with small cakes of dried chokecherries mixed with fat. She offers you one to taste. It is sweet and rich, grounding you instantly. She explains that such foods carry concentrated energy, perfect for gatherings that last long into the night. Her eyes sparkle as she speaks. You can tell she has been looking forward to this day. Nearby, a group of men prepare a stew thick enough to stand a spoon upright. They add bits of dried rabbit and handfuls of wild herbs preserved from summer. One man explains that certain herbs are saved specifically for feast days, their fragrant oils meant to lift spirits and awaken memories. He hands you a sprig of one such plant. When you rub it between your fingers, a bright, lemony scent bursts into the air. You breathe it in deeply, warmed from the inside out. As more people gather, you notice bundles being unwrapped near the central fire. Gifts. Winter feasts often carried an element of exchange, not formal trade but something softer. A grandmother presents a newly stitched pouch to her daughter. A boy proudly offers his father a carved bone charm. A girl shows her friend a small necklace made from bird bones and red-dyed cord. None of the gifts are lavish. They are tokens of connection, the threads that hold community close, even when the land feels harsh and wide. Laughter rises near the edge of camp, where a group practices winter games. You join them to watch as two young men toss a small ring made from willow branches toward carved pegs in the snow. Their throws arc high, graceful against the pale sky. Children cheer wildly whether the ring lands perfectly or misses entirely. A woman invites you to try. You throw the ring with exaggerated seriousness, and the children erupt in giggles when it swerves crookedly. Even you cannot help but laugh. Another cluster organizes a foot race across a long, packed stretch of snow. Runners line up, bouncing lightly on their toes for warmth. When the signal is given, they sprint forward, their feet kicking up frozen dust as they glide across the crust. Cheers erupt from every direction. A young woman wins by several strides, sliding to a triumphant stop with her arms raised. People rush in to hug her, their excitement ringing across the plains. At one point, someone unwraps a drum and begins tapping a slow, steady rhythm. The beat grows stronger as others join, using rattles made from gourds and hooves tied with sinew. Children sway, adults smile quietly. Music gathers like warm air around the fire, soothing and invigorating at once. You feel it settle in your chest, resonating through winter's weight. A curious little custom emerges as someone produces a pot of melted snow sweetened with berries. People take turns sipping it while offering a short spoken wish for the coming months. Wishes for strong hunts, for healthy children, for easy travel, for patient hearts. When your turn comes, you sip the chilled sweet liquid and whisper something soft enough that only you can hear. It slips into the air like a small spark. As the feast nears its peak, people settle onto thick hides around the fire. Food is passed from hand to hand. Roasted meat, berry cakes, sweet broth, warm flatbread baked on stones. You eat slowly, savoring each bite. Conversation flows easily. Jokes bounce lightly across the group. The fire crackles, throwing golden light onto smiling faces. An elder stands to speak. The chatter dims. He lifts a bowl of steaming stew, holding it gently as if it contains something sacred. He speaks about gratitude for the winter's teachings, for the strength of the community, for the animals that provided food, and for the storms that tested everyone without breaking them. His voice is steady, deep with memory. The firelight turns his breath into soft clouds. You listen, feeling his words settle into the warm space between everyone present. When he finishes, another elder steps forward, sharing a childhood memory of a winter feast so joyful that people danced for hours, even while snow fell thick around them. She describes how the snowflakes caught in torchlight looked like thousands of flickering spirits joining the celebration. You picture it vividly and feel a small thrill run through you. A quiet conversation beside you drifts toward winter traditions. One woman mentions that scholars today continue to debate how often such feasts occurred and how they varied across regions. She shrugs, smiling. What matters, she says, is that winter gatherings brought people back to themselves. You nod, sensing the truth in her words, without needing any academic proof. As dusk deepens, drums grow louder and movement begins. People rise, forming a slow, circular dance around the fire. Feet slide softly across the snow. Voices hum in harmony. You join, feeling your steps merge with theirs, your breath syncing with the rhythm of the circle. The warmth from the fire and the bodies around you wraps your senses in comfort. Snow begins to fall gently, white flakes spinning downward like tiny feathers. Instead of cold, the snow feels celebratory, drifting through the air as if joining the dance. Children reach for the falling flakes, giggling as they melt on their tongues. Someone laughs and says the snow approves of the gathering. You smile, thinking that maybe it does. By the time the fire settles into glowing embers, you feel a full, calm warmth inside you. Winter remains vast and demanding, but tonight it feels softened, brightened by joy, song, food, and community. As you make your way back to the lodge, the echoes of laughter and music follow you, glowing like small lights against the long, cold night. Night settles slowly over the plains, dimming the feast's final embers, until only faint glows remain beneath the soft blanket of snow. You step outside your lodge and pause for a long moment, letting the quiet settle into your bones. Winter on the Great Plains owns a very specific kind of silence, one so deep it seems to stretch endlessly across the frozen world. Tonight you will learn to listen to that silence, and to the strange, delicate sounds that live inside it. You take a few steps away from camp, your boots crunching into the crusted snow. The sound echoes more sharply than you expect, cutting through the stillness like a line drawn across glass. You pause again and wait. Slowly, the world grows quiet once more. Above you, the sky spreads out in a dome of stars so vast and clear, it feels almost unreal. The cold sharpens their light, makes them flicker with fierce clarity. You inhale deeply, and your breath puffs into the air like a tiny drifting cloud. A faint sound reaches your ears, a low creaking, followed by a soft pop. At first you think it might be something behind you, but then you realize it comes from the earth itself. Winter causes the ground to expand and contract, and sometimes it speaks through those tiny movements. One well-established note from explorers who traveled these lands in winter describes hearing the plains breathe at night. Ice shifting, snow settling, roots tightening beneath the frozen soil. You hear it now, subtle, but unmistakable. You walk toward a cluster of cottonwoods near the frozen creek. Moonlight touches the branches, turning them into silver silhouettes. A sudden crack splits the air, sharp and startling. The tree just shifted under the weight of frost. The sound reverberates like a distant drum. You smile despite the jolt to your nerves. The cold has its own language here, and you are beginning to understand it. You kneel beside the creek, where a sheet of ice stretches across the surface. When you place your palm lightly on it, you feel faint vibrations, a whispering hum. Ice grows in layers during winter nights, sometimes forming long crystalline tunnels beneath its surface. A scout told you earlier that if you listen closely, you can hear the ice expanding. You lean in, ear near the frozen water. There it is again, a soft groan, a deep rumble, as if the creek is mumbling in its sleep. A rustle behind you makes you turn your head. A fox appears at the edge of the cottonwoods, its fur glowing faintly under the moon. It moves with silent precision, paws pressing gently into the snow. You hold your breath as it passes. Its presence feels like part of the night itself, neither startled nor startling. A faint trail of paw prints remains in its wake, crisp little stamps in the powder. When the wind brushes over them, they blur into tiny smudges. You continue walking, letting your senses open wider. Somewhere far to your right, a lone coyote lifts its voice. The howl rises into the still air, long and wavering, then fades into silence. Another joins from a different direction. A third answers. Their voices weave together like distant threads of music. People in camp told you earlier that winter howls help them understand where coyotes are hunting or traveling. One hunter mentioned an old belief that certain patterns of howls predict weather changes. Some experts today still try to interpret those patterns, unsure how much was observation and how much was symbolism. You listen carefully, feeling a strange comfort in the layered voices. The wind shifts. It begins as a faint stirring at your collar, then gathers into a long sigh that ripples across the plains. Snow lifts in tiny walls at your feet. It creates a soft hiss as it slides across the frozen surface. You close your eyes for a moment and just listen. Wind over snow has many tones, sometimes sharp, sometimes round, sometimes almost musical. Tonight it carries a gentle sound, like a whispered invitation. Somewhere nearby, a lodge covering flaps lightly. Leather rubbing against wooden poles makes a soft tapping that blends with the wind's sigh. From deeper in camp, you hear the murmur of voices, low, contented, fading in and out. A baby cries once, is hushed quickly, and the sound disappears into the quiet. Dogs shuffle in their sleep, their paws scratching faintly against packed snow. A curious little detail surfaces in your mind. According to one winter tale, the plains at night reveal secrets only when someone is truly listening. Animals move differently. Ice sings. The stars feel closer. The land breathes slower. Whether literal or metaphorical, the idea fits what you feel now. Everything seems heightened, as if the night itself grows more aware of your presence. You stand very still. A single spark of sound breaks through the quiet. A faint clicking noise. You follow it with your ears, then your feet. Eventually you discover its source. A frozen branch tapping gently against another as the breeze nudges them. The rhythm is delicate, almost playful. In another moment, the wind pauses, and the tapping stops instantly, leaving a sudden silence that feels enormous. Your breath grows slow, deep. You kneel in the snow, letting its cold seep through your clothing until you adjust to it. The plains stretch endlessly before you in every direction, and you feel something you have not fully felt until now, a sense of smallness, but also belonging. Winter strips the world down to its essentials, revealing the quiet heartbeat beneath everything. A distant thud makes you turn your head. It sounds like a heavy body shifting, maybe a buffalo moving in its sleep, or perhaps a horse shaking snow from its coat. The noise carries easily across the frozen ground. Winter amplifies even the smallest disturbances. You rise and begin walking back toward camp. The stars shimmer above, arranged like careful beads across the sky. Your steps crunch softly, crisp but not sharp. You try stepping more lightly, and the sound softens further until you move almost silently, like the fox you saw earlier. At the edge of camp, you pause once more. A breeze runs through the circle of lodges, brushing loose flakes from the roofs. The snow drifts down slowly, glittering in the faint firelight. For a moment, it almost looks like the sky is falling in tiny, shimmering pieces. You breathe deeply, letting the sounds of the night settle in your memory. The echoes of wind, ice, distant animals, and shifting trees blend into something almost sacred. Winter nights teach a different kind of survival, one of attention, patience, and quiet presence. As you duck into your lodge, the warmth wraps around you. The outside hush lingers in your ears a few seconds longer before dissolving into the soft crackle of the fire. The night continues its long, steady breathing, and you drift towards sleep with its quiet rhythm pulsing gently through your thoughts. Morning comes quietly, with a pale sunlight that looks almost fragile as it spreads across the endless white. You step outside and stretch, feeling stiffness melt from your shoulders. The camp is already stirring. Today carries a different feeling, not quite urgent, not festive, but purposeful. People are gathering tools, calling to children, and sweeping snow from open spaces. You soon understand why. Winter is the season when young people learn the skills they will carry into every other season of their lives. In warmer months, tasks race ahead too quickly for long lessons, but winter slows the world, creating hours of clear, focused practice. You follow a small group of youths toward a quiet area near the creek. The snow crunches beneath your feet as you walk. Several adults accompany them, carrying bows, small knives, and bundles of hide. The pace is unhurried. A sense of patience hangs in the cold air. One well-recorded insight from early observers notes that winter training sessions often took place after long storms, when clear skies made travel safer and the ground revealed fresh animal signs. You feel the truth of that timing now. The first lesson begins with tracking. A scout kneels beside a fresh line of prints, sharp in the newly fallen powder. He gestures for the youths to gather. Each child leans forward, studying the snow carefully. The scout explains how the depth of the print reveals the animal's weight, how the spacing hints at whether it walked calmly or moved with urgency, and how slight smudges at the edges show the direction of wind at the moment the animal passed. You watch the children mimic his posture, tracing the shapes with mittened fingers. Their eyes shine with concentration. One girl points out a set of smaller prints trailing beside the larger ones. The scout nods approvingly. A young animal following the older one, he says. The girl beams. A boy tries to guess the species and receives polite laughter when he suggests something clearly too large. The scout ruffles the boy's hood, reminding him that learning begins with mistakes. You move with them toward a cluster of brush where faint paths weave between the branches. A woman demonstrates how to read the size and height of bent twigs. She tells the children to imagine the height of a deer's shoulder or the delicate nudge of a rabbit squeezing underneath. They crouch, squint, and make guesses, their voices rising with excitement. You join them in bending low to the ground, trying to see the world from the perspective of a creature moving through winter shadows. Farther ahead, another group practices archery. A tall man stands behind a boy, guiding his hands gently on the bow. He shifts the boy's elbow, adjusts the bowstring, reminds him to breathe. The bow creaks softly as the string pulls back. When the arrow releases, it slices through the cold air and lands in the snow a few feet from the target. The boy groans dramatically, but everyone cheers anyway. Improvement comes slowly, especially in winter when fingers stiffen easily. A woman hands him a firmer grip wrap, explaining that warmth helps precision. A curious winter teaching comes to mind. Some elders once insisted that children learn archery first, while wearing heavy mitts, so that summer's bare-handed practice feels effortless. Whether practical or symbolic, the idea fits what you see now. One girl shoots with her mitt still on, struggling at first but refusing to give up. When her arrow thunks into the edge of the target, she throws her arms up in triumph. Nearby, a boy practices carving small trap components from pieces of wood. An elder sits with him, showing how to smooth the edges and shape the notch precisely. The boy's knife movements are hesitant at first. The elder places his hand over the boy's, slowing the motion until the cuts are clean and sure. Small traps made in winter catch birds or rabbits, providing extra food during lean stretches. You pick up a finished piece and admire the craftsmanship hidden in something so simple. A group of younger children gathers around a patch of open snow where a woman demonstrates how to build a miniature shelter. She shapes a mound of snow, hollows out the core, and explains how such temporary windbreaks can protect travelers when storms approach suddenly. The children take turns building their own, laughing when their walls collapse and cheering when someone's structure holds firm. You help one child patch a gap in his snow wall, and his face glows with pride. Beyond them, older youths practice using long poles to test snow depth and stability. A man shows them how to listen for the hollow sound of concealed pockets beneath the surface. They jab the poles cautiously into snowdrifts. You join them, hearing the difference between packed snow and unsafe hollows. The poles make soft thuds that echo in the cold air. A lively discussion forms among the instructors. One argues that youths should learn to read animal signs before learning tool-making. Another insists that woodworking must come first because a good tool shapes understanding of the land. Their friendly disagreement reflects a debate that researchers still ponder today. Which skills came earliest in a child's winter education? The truth seems to shift depending on families, regions, and traditions. Listening to them talk, you suspect the answer is that learning flowed in all directions at once. Later, a woman leads a group toward the frozen creek to practice identifying safe ice. She taps the surface lightly, then presses her weight slowly. She teaches them to examine color, thickness, and the sound ice makes when stressed. You kneel with the children and listen. A low, humming tone vibrates beneath your palms, steady and safe. The children take turns tapping and listening, each discovering how winter speaks through solid water. Near the creek bank, two children attempt to set a small fishing line through a hole cut earlier in the season. The line trembles as they lower it. A man kneels beside them, explaining how tiny vibrations travel through the cold water. The children hold the line between their fingers, eyes wide, waiting for a delicate tug. It never comes, but their excitement stays bright. Back on the open plains, older youths rehearse silent movement. A woman instructs them to walk lightly, placing each foot with intention so the snow makes as little sound as possible. You watch them creep across the crust in slow, careful steps. Their breaths puff softly, their arms balance gently at their sides. When one child steps too quickly and sinks, the entire group bursts into playful laughter. The woman laughs too, reminding them that stealth takes patience. In the late afternoon, you join everyone near the central fire. Children chatter excitedly about their progress, showing off carved pieces, carefully tied knots, and small hides they scraped smooth. Their pride radiates through the camp like warm light. You sit among them, accepting a carved wooden token a child presses into your hands. It is clumsy and uneven, but clearly made with effort. You thank him, and he beams. Elders begin offering quiet reflections. One describes how learning skills in winter builds resilience. Another shares a memory of mastering tracking during a storm, guided by her father's steady voice. A third elder mentions gently that scholars today still discuss how winter education varied from group to group. She shrugs and smiles, saying that what mattered most was the passing of knowledge, however it happened. As the sun sinks beneath the horizon, the children gather their tools and head back to their lodges. You watch them disappear into the warm glow of lamplight, their cheeks rosy, their confidence glowing brighter than the snow around them. Winter training is not loud or dramatic. It is quiet, steady, and deeply woven into the fabric of life. A season of learning, of building skill, of shaping the future one careful motion at a time. You return to your lodge with the wooden token in your pocket, feeling its small weight as a reminder of the day's lessons. Morning light arrives slow and muted, as if the sun itself hesitates to cross the horizon. The air feels different today, not warmer exactly, but expectant, balanced on the edge between deep winter and the faintest hint of change. You step outside your lodge and see people gathered in quiet clusters, their eyes drifting toward the distant hills. Every winter has a moment like this, when the question begins to rise on everyone's breath. Is it time to move? You join a small group near the central fire. An elder crouches with a stick, tracing circles in the snow. Around him, hunters, gatherers, scouts, and caretakers watch intently. Their posture says everything. Today will be a day of reading signs, weighing choices, and deciding whether the camp should remain settled or begin preparing for migration. One well-documented observation from winter accounts across the plains mentions that decisions to move often depended on a blend of careful environmental readings and intuitive wisdom passed down through generations. You sense that mixture now, alive and humming at the edge of every conversation. The elder begins by drawing a line pointing north. He explains that early in winter, storms arrived from that direction with sharp regularity. But lately, the winds have shifted ever so slightly. You feel it too, the breeze carries a softness not present a week ago. A hunter steps forward, adding that he found patches of exposed grass on a southern slope where snow has thinned. That kind of thaw, even a small one, can mean the land is slowly waking beneath its icy blanket. Someone else kneels and lifts a handful of snow, examining its texture. The crystals feel wetter than they did yesterday. A woman nearby leans in, noting that moisture like this suggests the sun has begun its slow return. You can see the excitement flicker in her eyes, yet others remain cautious. Winter can fake its endings. A warm day might be nothing more than a trick before another storm sweeps across the plains. A quiet debate forms, thoughtful rather than tense. One scout insists the buffalo will begin shifting soon, and that staying too long risks missing early opportunities to track the herd. Another hunter counters that travel during unpredictable weather could expose the camp to unnecessary danger. Their voices remain calm, grounded. No one here acts without considering every angle. Even young people stand quietly, absorbing how decisions ripple through the entire community. A woman holds up a piece of frozen willow bark and cracks it gently. The sound it makes, sharp, crisp, tells her the tree is still deep in winter's grip. She shakes her head slightly. "Not yet," she suggests. But a man beside her tilts his head and says he heard the creek's ice shift before dawn. A low groan echoed through the valley, the kind that sometimes accompanies the first loosening of frozen water. They trade thoughtful looks. Each sign holds weight. Each carries its own voice. You walk with a few scouts toward higher ground to gather more clues. Snow crunches beneath your boots, leaving neat tracks behind you. The scouts point out subtle differences in the drifts. Some have softened at the edges, curling in on themselves like melting wax. Others remain sharp and tall, still carved by winter winds. The scouts read these shapes as if skimming lines in a familiar book. When you reach the ridge, the world opens wide beneath you. The plains stretch out in sweeping waves of white and pale blue. The sun presses closer now, warming your face even though the wind remains cold. A scout crouches low, sifting through a thin patch of snow until he reaches frozen earth. He presses his palm to it. After a moment, he smiles faintly. He says the ground feels less like iron today, more like stone touched by warmth. You place your own hand there and feel it. Just a whisper of softness, but enough to carry hope. As you begin descending the ridge, a woman picks up a tiny sprig sticking through the snow. Its stem is stiff but tinted with the faintest green. She holds it reverently. Signs like this matter deeply. Even the smallest plant can announce a shift the sky has not yet admitted. Back in camp, the elders gather again. People sit in a wide circle, wrapped in hides, leaning forward with quiet anticipation. A fire crackles at the center, its warmth swirling upward. As you watch, someone speaks about food stores. They count how much dried meat, rendered fat, and preserved berries remain. There is enough for several more weeks, but not enough to waste through indecision. The balance between resources and timing becomes clearer with each observation. A curious memory resurfaces from earlier stories. Some families believed that animals chose the right time to move before humans did. If birds shifted their patterns or if wolves traveled in new directions, that often guided the first steps of migration. As if on cue, a raven croaks from a nearby tree, its wings beating strongly as it lifts into the sky. Its path arcs southeast. People glance at one another. Ravens often know where food lies accessible beneath the thawing crust. You notice a group of youths quietly gathering tools, snowshoes, sleds, small bundles of fire-starting materials. They are preparing without assumption, ready either for motion or for another long stretch in camp. Winter survival thrives on readiness, and their calm organization reflects that. A pair of elders kneel beside the fire and sprinkle dried sage into the flames. The scent drifts through the circle. They close their eyes briefly, reflecting. After the fire steadies, one elder speaks softly. She says that migration should not be rushed, nor should it be delayed out of fear. Winter's end is a conversation, not a demand. She shares a story of a winter, long ago, when a camp waited too long and missed the chance to reach open grazing areas before the buffalo moved. The story carries a tone of gentle caution rather than reprimand. Another elder responds with a different memory, one of leaving too early, only to be caught in a violent storm that forced everyone to take shelter in snow caves for days. People nod thoughtfully. You feel their shared wisdom settle into the cold air like quiet snowflakes. Scholars today still analyze how winter migration decisions were made, examining patterns in oral histories, environmental clues, and the timing of animal behavior. Some believe that elders led the decision entirely. Others argue that scouts carried equal weight. Listening to the circle now, you sense the truth is more fluid. Decisions rise from many voices, many signs, many quiet calculations. A long silence follows. People look toward the horizon, each reading something different. You hear only the soft crackle of the fire and the distant groan of ice settling near the creek. At last, an elder stands. She raises her hand gently, not in command but in clarity. She says that the camp will remain here a bit longer, watching, preparing, listening. But preparations for movement will begin quietly. Boots will be repaired, sleds inspected, horses rested, food packed for quick loading. No rush, no stillness, a balance. You feel relief ripple subtly through the group. The decision feels right. Winter has not loosened enough yet, but soon. As you walk away from the circle, a soft breeze brushes your cheek, not harsh, not biting, just a whisper from the coming season. You glance toward the distant hills and find yourself imagining the first true thaw, the moment when the snow pulls back like a curtain and the land reappears brown, cold, but alive. And you understand why the question of movement begins now, in this delicate moment between winter's grip and spring's first quiet knock. The next morning carries a brightness you have not felt in weeks. The sun rises earlier, stretching long, pale rays across the snow until the whole landscape glows like polished glass. You step outside and inhale air that feels different, softer at the edges. The cold still grips your cheeks, but underneath it there is something new, a looseness, a hint of warmth that was not there before. People in camp feel it too. They move with a quiet excitement, exchanging glances that say perhaps, finally, the season is shifting. A group gathers near the creek, where the ice gives off a subtle sheen. You follow them and kneel beside the bank. One man taps the ice with a stick. Instead of the deep, solid thud you have grown used to, the sound rings lighter, almost hollow. He nods thoughtfully. The ice has begun to thin. One thoroughly documented observation from winter journals describes how communities often use sound to judge seasonal change. When the ice tone changed, winter had started to loosen its grip. You listen again. The difference is undeniable. A woman crouches beside a patch of earth exposed near a tree root. She presses her fingers into the damp soil. It yields slightly. Not much, but enough to earn a quiet smile. Moisture like this means the sun has been working on the frozen ground. The children crowd around her, poking the spot eagerly. Their joy spreads like warmth through the clearing. As you walk back toward camp, you notice how the wind behaves differently today. Instead of biting, it brushes your face in a cool, almost refreshing sweep. It carries a faint scent you have not smelled since the last days of autumn, the soft, sweet hint of thawing brush. You stop walking and breathe deeply. It floods your senses with memories of rustling leaves, sun-warmed grass, and the delicate promise of green returning. Several hunters stand at the edge of camp, examining a row of spears and bows. They discuss whether the buffalo herds might begin moving soon. Tracks discovered yesterday showed deeper impressions than expected, as if animals walked on softer ground. A few argue that this could signal the earliest stage of spring migration. Others caution that herds sometimes shift briefly during warm spells before winter reclaims the plains. Their voices mingle calmly, each grounded in careful thought. Even now, no decision is made without weighing the land's message from every angle. You wander toward the horse corral. The animals seem restless in a hopeful way, pawing the snow, shaking out their manes, snorting clouds into the morning light. A young colt trots back and forth as if eager to run across open ground free of drifts. A caretaker strokes its neck, laughing softly. She tells you that horses sense seasonal changes in their bones long before humans do. You grin, imagining the horses whispering to each other that spring is coming. A curious little memory from earlier stories rises in your thoughts. Some elders once joked that the horses always knew when to move camp because they started waking the humans too early, snorting at the lodge entrances until someone finally got up. You glance at the restless horses now and wonder whether this day marks one of those times. Further into camp, people begin checking travel equipment with fresh purpose. Sleds are brought out and examined for cracks. Hide straps are stretched and softened. Snowshoes hang drying near fires, though soon they may hang unused. Women sort through food stores, organizing them into bundles for potential travel. Children carry small baskets toward the central area, offering help where they can. The scene bustles, but with a quiet efficiency, not rush. A group of elders sits in the sun, enjoying the rare warmth. One rests a hand on her knee, feeling the heat soak through the hide. She tells the others about a winter from her youth when the first thaw arrived suddenly, melting the snow so quickly that the creek swelled into a roaring river overnight. They laugh softly, remembering how the entire camp rushed to move before the water cut their path. She adds that scholars today still discuss how unpredictable the transition between seasons could be, noting that each community adapted in different ways depending on their location and experience. The elders nod, remembering how every winter ended in its own unpredictable rhythm. You kneel beside the fire to warm your hands. The flames dance higher than usual today, fed by wood that seems to burn brighter in the warming air. Someone stirs a pot of stew, the aroma drifting gently upward. Another person hums softly while mending a strap. The entire camp feels suspended between two seasons, standing on a quiet threshold. A scout approaches from beyond the ridge, his breath quick and his eyes bright. He reports that the river ice near the bend has cracked, revealing flowing water beneath. People gather around him with interest. Flowing water this early is rare but not unheard of. It signals a shift not just in temperature, but in the land's readiness to wake. You join the group heading to the river to see for yourself. The walk feels easier than it has all season. Your feet press into the snow, but the surface gives slightly, instead of resisting like frozen stone. When you reach the river bend, you hear it immediately, a faint, musical trickle beneath the ice. The sound is delicate, but powerful in its promise. You kneel, pressing your ear to the cold surface. The water murmurs like a whispered invitation. A woman taps the ice along the edge, and a thin crack splinters outward. She laughs, not out of carelessness but out of hope. The river is restless, ready to break free. Further along the bank, you find tracks etched deeply in the snow. They belong to a small herd of antelope. Their hooves have churned the powder as they pushed through toward exposed grass. You crouch and touch one of the prints. The snow beneath is damp. The warmth from their bodies combined with the rising sun has started to melt the ground. This, too, is a sign that spring draws near. You and the others return to camp, buzzing with new energy. People gather around, eager to hear what you saw. As the news spreads, smiles appear everywhere. Even the elders lean forward with renewed interest. A few begin speaking of old migration songs, sung only when new seasons approached. Despite the excitement, no final decision is made today. The elders remind everyone that winter can change its mind. A clear morning can become a punishing storm before dusk. Yet preparations continue, steady and hopeful. Hides are folded for travel, tools inspected again, horses grazed near patches of exposed earth. Children race around gathering anything that might be needed for a sudden move. By late afternoon, you sit beside the river again, watching the snow sparkle under the lowering sun. A single bird circles overhead, its wings cutting through the cold air. For a moment, you think it might land, but instead, it turns and glides southward. Its direction makes you hold your breath. Birds know the seasons too. As the sky dims into evening, you walk back to camp. Fires burn brightly. People eat together, exchanging small stories of past winters, comparing signs, recalling moments when the first thaw fooled them or rewarded them. The warmth inside the lodge feels sweeter than usual, as if the air itself has softened with anticipation. You curl into your blankets that night, listening for the creek. It murmurs faintly in the distance. A quiet promise, not yet fulfilled but steadily growing. Soon, you think. Soon the snow will melt, the ground will wake, and the camp will decide to move. But not today. Tonight, you fall asleep on the edge of winter, held gently by the first breath of spring. The next morning feels like a held breath finally exhaled. The sky is brighter than it has been in weeks, the sunlight stretching farther across the plains, as if reaching for something hidden beneath the snow. You step outside and immediately sense that today is different. Not because the air is suddenly warm, but because the cold no longer feels absolute. It has softened, thinned, loosened at the edges. The land is shifting. Everyone feels it. People gather near the central fire, waiting for the elders. No one rushes, yet every movement carries quiet anticipation. The snow beneath your boots is less rigid than yesterday, yielding slightly with each step. Smoke rises straight upward in thin, wavering columns. The horses stand alert, ears turning in precise little arcs, as if listening for something just beyond the horizon. Children cluster together, whispering excitedly. Even the dogs seem restless, pacing short circles near the lodges. When the elders arrive, the camp grows still. They sit together in a wide circle, each facing a different direction, reading the land with practiced eyes. An older woman closes her eyes and lifts her face toward the sun, letting the light warm her cheeks. She breathes in slowly. A man beside her scrapes snow from a patch of ground and touches the soil beneath. Another listens intently for the distant song of shifting ice. One clearly recorded detail from winter practices across the plains notes that decisions about ending winter's stay were made by reading many signs at once: sun, earth, animals, wind, water, memory. Today, those signs stand before the elders like open pages. They consider each one in thoughtful silence. Finally, the eldest woman speaks. Her voice is soft but firm, shaped by countless winters. She says the land is readying itself. She says the winds have changed their tone. She says the herds will stir soon. She says the camp must prepare to move. A wave of quiet emotion passes through the group. Not surprise, not fear. Something gentler. Relief. Just the beginning of it. The decision does not spark chaos. Instead, the camp moves with calm, practiced coordination. People spread out to their winter tasks, only now those tasks shift toward preparation. You join a group gathering the last of the stored wood, bundling it neatly for travel. Another group disassembles temporary shelters, folding hides carefully and stacking poles by size. Snowshoes are inspected one final time, though soon they may not be needed. A woman calls children to her side, showing them how to wrap items securely so they will not jostle on the sleds. They mimic her motions with focused determination, their small brows furrowing as they tighten cords. You can't help but smile at how seriously they take their new seasonal responsibilities. Near the creek, you see several men testing the ice again. This time, when they tap it, the sound rings soft and hollow. Water murmurs beneath the surface louder than yesterday, a liquid whisper climbing toward daylight. One scout grins as he lifts a shard of ice. It is thinner than a fingertip. Winter's grip is fading. You help repair a sled that has warped slightly from long use. The wood feels less brittle today, as though responding to the rising temperatures. A craftsman tightens the runners and nods in satisfaction. He tells you that a well-cared-for sled feels ready before the people do. You laugh softly, sensing a deeper truth in his words. Nearby, a group sorts through bundles of dried berry cakes, jerky strips, and medicinal herbs. They divide everything evenly, ensuring each family has enough for the first days of travel. You take a turn carrying baskets between groups, the rhythm of the work gentle and steady. All around you, voices blend into a low, warm hum. A curious memory rises in the conversation. An old tale about a winter so stubborn it pretended to fade long enough for a camp to move, only to roar back the next day. The storyteller laughs, insisting it really happened. Another elder disputes the tale, claiming the storm came weeks later. Their good-natured disagreement draws smiles. The exact truth may be lost in time, but the story remains alive, carried through the generations. Even researchers today still puzzle over the exact timing of certain migrations, noting how oral histories weave both fact and meaning together into resilient threads. As the day stretches on, horses are saddled and brushed. Their manes ripple in the breeze, pack ropes are coiled, tools are organized, sleds arranged. Children toss handfuls of loose snow into the air, letting it fall around them like glittering petals. The camp buzzes with a kind of hopeful energy that warms you in ways the fire never fully could. You join two women as they fold one of the largest buffalo hides. Its surface glows softly in the afternoon sun. They smooth it with their hands, checking the seams and the softness of the inner lining. When they finish, they step back and admire it. It will become part of the main load that carries the heart of the camp's belongings. Someone begins to hum. It is a tune you heard once during the midwinter feast, a melody that spoke of endurance and renewal. Soon others join, humming or whistling. The song winds through the camp like gentle smoke, lifting spirits without demanding attention. As evening approaches, the sleds stand in tidy rows, loaded and ready. The horses graze near exposed patches of earth. Fires burn low, preparing for their final night in this spot. People gather in small circles to rest, share food, and speak quietly about the days ahead. You walk toward the ridge, where the scouts first sensed the thaw. The view is breathtaking. The plains stretch wide, touched by the pale gold of late afternoon. The snow glows like a soft blanket pulled thin by sunlight. You close your eyes and breathe deeply. The wind feels gentler now, carrying the faintest warmth from the direction the camp will soon travel. When you return, the elders stand near the central fire. They say the camp will move at dawn. Not hurried, not racing winter, just stepping forward as the earth awakens beneath their feet. You eat your evening meal slowly, savoring each bite, knowing tomorrow the landscape will begin to shift beneath the sleds and horses. The air in the lodge feels warmer than usual. People speak softly, not out of fear but out of reverence for this moment between what has been endured and what awaits. As you settle into your blankets, you listen for the murmur of the creek. Its voice is louder tonight, singing of movement. Tomorrow, the camp will follow. The lodge grows quieter as the night deepens. The last echoes of voices soften until they blend with the low sigh of the wind brushing against the hide walls. You lie back slowly, letting the warmth of layered furs sink into your skin, letting your breath fall into a long, easy rhythm. Somewhere outside, a horse shifts in its sleep, and the gentle sound filters through the stillness like a calm heartbeat. The fire has settled into a soft glow now, pulsing faintly in the dimness. Each flicker seems to stretch time a little longer, smoothing the edges of your thoughts. You feel the day loosen its grip, drifting away like snow carried off by a slow breeze. The walls around you cradle the fading warmth, holding it close. Everything feels steady. Everything feels safe. As your eyes grow heavier, the distant creek murmurs again, its thawing water whispering of gentle change ahead. Not a rush, not a demand, only a quiet promise that winter's long journey will soon give way to the soft touch of spring. The sound rolls through you in waves, calming your breath, softening your muscles, easing every place where tension still lingers. Outside, the plains rest under their moonlit blanket. No storms, no sharp winds, just the wide, peaceful hush of a land breathing slowly in the dark. You imagine the snow glowing gently, each crystal catching a bit of starlight, each drift settling a little deeper into stillness. Let yourself drift with it. Let the quiet wrap around you like another warm hide. Let the slow, rhythmic breath of the winter plains guide you deeper into rest. You are warm. You are sheltered. You are safe. Sweet dreams.